All right. Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is going to be another edition of the Destroying Pro-Abort show. This is the show to where we keep it real on here. We expose pro-abort ignorance, bad argumentation, um, just fallacies, typical things that pro-aborts like to do to try to justify their murderous position. We expose it all on this show. We have facts on top of facts on top of facts to destroy ignorance, such as things like, the alleged, the claim of all these alleged women dying before abortion was legalized in the United States prior to Roe v. Wade, um, the 3% Planned Parenthood lie, um, the case of Savita in Ireland, which they falsely attempt to um, use to justify their position, all sorts of things. And what it comes down to it is there is no excuse for murder, period. You can't justify murder. And they hinge a lot of their arguments on just ignorance and stupidity. You can't justify the unjustifiable. Murder is just not justifiable, and that's what abortion is. It's killing, it's murder. A very, very easy, easily provable or easily demonstrable, I should say, argument can show that abortion is indeed murder and should not be allowed in any capacity on the planet. And I have to stress this every single show. The problem is a lot of pro-aborts will quickly confuse the intention to save a mother's life with intentionally killing the unborn child. They'll immediately confuse that, and it's freaking sad. Um, but we expose that sort of ignorance on this show too. So, as I do every show, I'm going to post this link in a few places, and then we can see if we can get anyone in here to discuss, this issue of abortion and how to deal with pro-abort logic, or maybe even to strengthen up pro-life arguments. So give me just one moment while I post this link in a few places, and we'll get this thing started. Okay, I'll post a link in the side chat. We have Haley here. Hi, Haley. How you doing? All right. So I got that posted in the side chat. I'm going to go to a few places, a few other places as well. Let's see. All right. All right, I'm just about here. Let's see. Just gotta post this in one more place. All right, now that we have that done, we can get into further discussion here. Um, all right, why do I guess the first and foremost important question here is why do I call um, pro-choice pro-abortion? Well, I have a few different, past shows on that, but the main reason is it's just true by definition. I mean, if you look at the prefix for, it means the prefix pro. I mean, it means in favor of slash in support of. You see, so by definition, if one, believes in the legalization of abortion or keeping abortion legalized, then by necessity they are pro-abortion. But the other reason why is because I mean you can't get out of saying you just can't get away from the fact that if you want to get behind abortion, you need to accept all of it. You don't need to try to accept what's convenient for you, because the problem with a lot of pro-choicers, or as they would call themselves, is they want to accept certain parts of abortion but shy away from others. They want to kind of um, keep away from the negative stigma of it, because it has a negative stigma, not even just by pro-lifers, but by a lot of them themselves, by their own you know acknowledgement. Abortion itself has a negative stigma, but they want to try to sort of shy away from the negative stigma of it while still holding to it in some sort of capacity. And I mean, if you don't want to like take it all for what it is and accept as, because I mean, the fact is, they said, well, I don't like the idea of abortion. I don't like the idea. They know that it's another human life that we're dealing with in a balance. Every last single one of them knows it. That's why there's this sort of attempt to shy away from it, and this attempt to try to um, dance around that issue while still holding to it. They know that they are justifying murder. Every last single one of them knows it. But again, it's about holding on to keeping it legal while trying to, not associate themselves with the worst parts of it, like the fact that that 2,500 to 3,000 children have been killed on average per day. They don't want to associate themselves with the gigantic numbers. They don't want to associate themselves with, the increasing numbers of women who are in, who are regretting their abortions. They don't want to associate themselves with the numerous evidence of sick and disgusting looking pictures in which it shows this outright destruction and the brutality that abortion is. Now, I grant that not all the pictures are real. Some of them may very well be faked, but not all of them are faked, okay? I'm not going to make this argument that every last single one of them are faked, all right? But that's another thing. But assuming that the even one of those pictures are real, let's say hypothetically we assume one of those pictures are real. I mean, wouldn't that be cause to be like, hey, we should not permit this? You got just a human just chopped into pieces, just brutally. I think it should only take one before someone is like, yeah, we gotta stop this. But apparently, it's not that simple for some people. For most people who um, claim to be pro-choice, which I mean, obviously, I think that's just a whole bit of crap. Because where's the choice for the child? I mean, honestly, there isn't. What's the choice for the child's life? Um, you can't just claim to be pro-choice and then just try to act like the child isn't there in some sort of capacity. They have to work so hard and try so often, so long to escape that reality. The fact is, it's an inescapable reality. You can't escape it. And whether they like it or not, I'm going to continue to expose this evil for what it is, because it is evil. Abortion is evil, abortion is murder, and I'm not going to stop exposing it. I'm going to relentlessly expose it nonstop. And if they think they can offer arguments against mine, then they can come into my room and try to refute me. But until then, I'm just going to keep banging the drum that it's evil, it's murder, and I'm not going to stop. This aim of mine is to, I'm literally attempting to offend the conscience of people, because that's how you get things done. That's how real change gets done. And I do not shy away from the fact that I am literally attempting to offend the conscience of people by pointing out the truth. The truth doesn't care about your feelings. It really does not. Pro-aborts rely on all this subjective logic and all this nonsensical reasoning to argue their position. Every time I think about what's going on in the womb, when you have a surgical instrument just entering into where the unborn is and just chopping that child to pieces is no, there's no way you can justify that. I don't, Provost, I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea. You know what else I don't like? I don't like rape. I don't like the idea of torturing children for fun or things like this. But you know what? We don't have those things legal. Then they want to say, well, um, and those things aren't involving another person, or those things aren't inside another woman's body. Like, that's just dumb, because if it had anything to do with them being inside another woman's body, then you wouldn't have all these laws that are restricting abortion right now. If they really were truly consistent about what they were saying, then it would be against all abortion. You know, they wouldn't think that there should be any restrictions on when a woman can get an abortion. What's up, Emmanuel? Good to see you, man.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
What's up, man?
Not a bunch. Just we are on. You are on the Destroying Pro Board show.
Thank you for having me on this show. I am.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Hey, try resetting real quick. There's just a slight bit of distortion there, but yeah, let's rip apart some idiotic Pro Board logic.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe it's not even the distortion. Maybe you're just bumping it. Do you have like a mic that you're bumping into or something?
Nah. My mic. See, I'm trying to. I'm plugging this thing on my PC, and the microphone seems to be a little loose.
Oh, okay. But I'm on a relentless mission to expose this evil for what it is, and I don't care whose feelings get hurt in the process. I mean, I don't understand why we got this nonsense of people still in 2016 trying to justify the murder of unborn children. It's
If you
just
ask,
stupid.
if you ask me, I think it's already been exposed. It's just that people want to try and do some sort of mental gymnastics to change that.
That's true, but we expose those mental gymnastics on this show. That's what we do. We keep
Yeah,
it real on this show.
we could be real on the show. And then we grab some then we grab some guns and pop caps in everybody's butts.
It's just like some metaphorical gun some metaphorical cat busting and intellectual nonsense and just stupidity.
If you want, I can give you another one. How about beating the living shite out of everything, like doing some fury punches, like
like
a fury,
some
like a flurry of punches going so fast that it's just like the wind. It's like there's millions of fists going right at you.
like some fist of the North Star type of stuff.
Oh, I've heard of that. I've never watched it. How about One Piece? You know One Piece?
Yeah, I know One Piece.
Yeah, Luffy's Gatling. Yeah, thousands of fists coming towards you, pounding into the ground.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But this is what this show is about, and a lot of people ain't gonna like it. A lot of people are gonna get offended. I don't give a crap. There was this guy kicked out the room yesterday because he tried to tell me that living was not the same as alive, and I showed him a general dictionary exposing that nonsense, and then he was like, "Show me a medical dictionary."
He said,
And
"Oh wait, someone's on the phone. I'll come back."
all right,
Hello.
but anyway, I was talking about a gentleman that was in here yesterday who said that living wasn't the same as alive, and I showed him a general dictionary showing that it's pretty much interchangeable and synonymous. And he was like, "Oh, show me a medical dictionary," and I did. I showed him two, and he's like, "Well, you don't understand it. You know, we're not medical professionals." And I was just like, "Dude, you gotta go now. I meet your criteria, and then you still want to argue." Because at that point, that tells me that you're arguing at people, not trying to honestly engage the issue. So, yeah, that we don't play these games on this show. We just get straight to the points. We don't beat around the bush. We just expose evil for what it is, because abortion is evil, and I don't give a crap who disagrees. And it's not me just saying that abortion is evil. I can actually demonstrate exactly why that's the case. Because I mean, I think it's pretty much simple. You don't kill a child in the womb. If you want to, argue against personhood or humanity or what have you, you can attempt to do all those things. But what you cannot, get around is the fact that The unborn has a human nature. You can't get away from that. That's you can't escape that obvious fact. I mean, nothing anybody's going to say is going to refute human nature to what, no matter whether you want to try to play with definitions or play with, level of development and all this other crap. You can't, the indisputable thing you can't get away from is the nature of the unborn. I mean, you're not going to be able to have a single standalone sperm cell implanted in the womb and it's going to grow and develop like in human embryo. It's not
Now,
going to happen.
yo, dude, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah,
You said that this guy was talking to you. Was like he said, living is not the same as being alive.
yeah.
What was he on about?
I guess if I was to probably make an educated assumption of what he was trying to say, I guess he was trying to allude to the fact that the unborn isn't alive in the same way as like someone like you and me are.
If he's not alive, then how's it growing?
Yeah, and I guess he was trying to say that we are alive in such a way as to distinguish merely being alive as from living. I'm guessing he's trying to say that we can experience stuff like emotions and um, certain things, and there's a particular sentience that we have, and I think to that degree he was probably trying to say living as opposed to just merely being alive. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that is not how the terms are used most often because Hogtie was in here yesterday and he rightly pointed out that like you have bacteria that are technically alive and that you have a number of different agents to kill bacteria like household cleaning products and antibacterial soap if you're washing your hands and whatnot. So you killing and alive is pretty much synonymous. It's interchangeable, and he was ignorantly arguing the terms to try to desperately justify his position, and it wasn't going anywhere.
Wasn't his position just an arbitrary one?
Yes, entirely.
Because at the impl- because basically, what is something is alive if it's growing or taking in nutrients. I mean, that's obviously when something is alive. It doesn't have to have all these extra things for it to be alive. Like that's like saying that a deer isn't alive because it doesn't have some sort of sentience.
Exactly. Yep.
Uh,
Um,
and by sentience, does he mean like some sort of individuality or something like that?
I would suppose. I guess
Uh,
maybe yeah. But however, any way he tries to slice it, he was miserably failing. Okay.
uh. But dude, what if like both the baby and the mother's life were in danger? I know that we humans we can't be 100% right, but what if that situation? What would abortion be okay then?
If say that again.
What if both the mother and the baby's life were in danger? In that situation, would an abortion be justified?
Well, what happens in that instance is they would look at the and try to induce delivery, because you can't really use an abortion procedure like the overwhelming majority of cases in which a woman's life is in danger is at a state to where a baby is very very developed where it has a chance to be saved, um, and an abortion procedure that late in pregnancy where the baby is like very very developed would typically take 2 to 3 days to prepare because you have to prepare the cervix, which when you start the whole process, the cervix opening is like the size of your average pen, your average ink pen, and you have to open up that area so you can pull the parts out, so you can pull out the baby parts outside the mother, from inside to the outside of the mother, without seriously harming her. But in order to expand that opening from just a pinpoint to like a opening to where you can actually extract parts through the opening, it takes 24 to 72 hours to prepare that. And if her life was in danger, by the time they prepared the abortion procedure in that way, she'd be long dead more than likely. You can't just wait 2 to 3 days to deal with an emergency situation where her life is in danger. So instead, what they would do is they'll try to induce delivery um, by um, by a number of different means, or they'll try a cesarean section.
Wait, by
So
induced delivery, do you mean they'll try a way to make the delivery more early?
yes,
Okay.
because you can stabilize a woman's condition and induce delivery in within like about an hour or so.
Would it
Induce
be?
early delivery or try cesarean section to resolve the life-threatening issue. Um,
But then
that's
if
an hour obviously beats 3 days. So an abortion procedure is not going to be the solution there anyway. So
but but
so
then if
yes,
you
abortion is not necessary. Go ahead.
But what about what Fiona said? I mean, Miss Fiona about that it would be too late by the time they did the C-section.
Say what?
But what about what Fiona said that by the time they did a C-section it would have been too late.
Like too late?
Yeah, the baby and the mother would have already been dead by the time of the C-section. If I remember
Well,
correctly.
I looked into that and I still have not even once found the where they say, hey, we intentionally killed a child in that instance. I looked into that and I still haven't found anything that says that they would kill the child, intentionally kill the child in that case. I
Okay.
guess they would probably still try to induce delivery, or they'll do something. But I wouldn't know exactly what it would be, but I certainly haven't found an abortion procedure to resolve that anywhere. And believe me, I've searched. I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Of course, if she's listening to this broadcast, I mean, it's possible. And she's always more than welcome to bring, medical documentation to say that, it would require an intentional killing procedure. But even she acknowledged that even if we were to assume for the sake of argument that that would be an intentional killing procedure, or there would be a intentional killing procedure to resolve um, a circumstance, a life-threatening circumstance, that doesn't magically extrapolate to abortion, and intentional killing is justified in any circumstance,
Oh,
because you can't say that a woman's life is in danger, so an intentional killing may be needed. Therefore, we can justify intentional killing for just, conceiving in consensual sex at an inconvenient time, or they just, a man and woman had one night stand, and bam, she's pregnant, and now she wants to kill. Like, that's very, very different than trying to justify, you know, the intentional killing in a life-threatening case. You can't connect that particular case to just justify intentional killing in any case. You can't do it.
yeah. Okay. Hmm.
So I mean, if we were to suppose that there would be a case that they would need to just intentionally kill, which again I haven't found, but if we were to suppose that for the sake of argument, then that still would not justify abortion. in any just particular context. And that's one thing a lot of these pro boards like to do. They like to exploit these horrific cases to try to falsely build a premise to justify abortion in any and every circumstance, and you just can't do it.
Oh yeah,
There's no connection.
the thing they say about it's the woman's choice, and I was like, no, it's not her choice. No woman at all has the choice to terminate a pregnancy. If they don't want to be pregnant, then they shouldn't have sex at all, or at least have some sort of extreme protection or something.
Hmm.
Because after all, what is sex for? It's for both pleasure and reproduction. If they can't control themselves, then it's not their, then they have no, then they're not supposed to like kill the baby at all. Why not just control yourself and wait till you're married, wedlock? Do that. That's much better.
Exactly.
But
That's
yet the
right.
le- but yet the left undermine it. Ben Shapiro.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. Ben Shapiro. I like that little exchange he had with that ignorant little young liberal who was trying to just say the stupid stuff. He just embarrassed her.
Yeah. I, right now, I'm trying to make a video. Right now, I'm making a video of a Trump supporter debating protesters. You see, this guy, he came to a Trump rally saying "fuck Islam." I think it has something to do with the Orlando shooting. And right now, my response is basically to the people who he's talking to because the arguments they're saying, they're not really standing up to. They don't really stand up to anything. So right now, I'm making a video. It could take some heavy editing, so it might take a long time for me to finish it.
All right, I'll be looking forward to it, man.
But trust me, oh, I believe this will be my masterpiece.
Yeah, I'll definitely be looking forward to that video, man. Yeah, I've seen a few of your videos, man. Man, you got some good stuff.
So man, I've been learning how to do them thug life videos, those editing skills. I'm learning it. So
Yeah,
sick.
yes, sir.
So what like have there been any new arguments that 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 people who are fine with abortion have been saying? Like have any new
No, Nah, that's just the emphatic no.
Hmm, hmm.
They really can't come up with anything new. I mean, the only thing they could come up is absurdity. If it's new, then it would be something absurd. I can't imagine them coming up with anything, actually logical.
Oh yeah, what? How about the thing about calling a man misogynist because he's against abortion?
Well, then that goes back to the whole, uh, feminist logic talking points, the third wave radical feminazi talking points, because they say women that are against abortion have internalized misogyny.
What the hell is internalized misogyny?
Exactly. What is it? It's just a little stupid buzzword term that they've made up to try to argue, their position without any sort of facts.
Like
They
micro,
just kind of assume.
like microaggressions. They're not. You can't see them because they're not there. That's why they call microaggressions. Milo Yiannopoulos.
Exactly. Can't see them, but apparently these people think they can see them. But apparently the only naked eye that can see them is theirs, and that's just microaggressions. That is so hilarious. Brother Carlos, man, what's up?
Hey, what's up? How you brothers doing today, man?
Not bad at all, man.
God, that's you.
I'm sorry, what you said?
That's your profile picture.
Yeah, that's me right there, man. I
Oh man.
forgot I was signed into that account.
Oh man, you bald. If I add Mr. Garrison's voice to yours, it will be perfect.
Yeah, I am bald, man.
I got nothing.
25 years old and completely bald, man. That sucks.
Just you know, I'm joking. I don't mean anything. I'm just messing with you, man.
No, that's what, man. But I heard what you guys were saying about being labeled a misogynist, and I don't think Misogyny is against our belief systems.
Misogyny is I forgot. Damn it! Is basically
It's to hate, like you hate women, right?
oh,
Yeah,
so internalized misogyny is that women hate themselves for being against abortion. That's what they mean by internalized misogyny. They secretly hate themselves.
No, I mean they use these words like misogyny and bigot and all these different type of so-called to kind of get like a an effect off of people, really to demonize people. You know, almost anybody who disagrees with something is considered a what a some type of has some type of phobia, which is ridiculous. Just because somebody disagrees with you, the reality is it's not.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. I watched the video and I haven't noticed this, but they're using phobia for everything. Transphobe, Islamic phobe, what else? I mean, like they've been adding phobe to everything. Next thing you know, they're gonna be saying like pedophobe, murder phobe, rape phobe, phobe on everything. Carlos, you there?
it's just a lousy way that they try to just try to argue their stupid logic. It's just buzzwords, just screaming feelings, as Ben Shapiro puts it. It's just pathetic. It's sad, and yeah, I think they substitute words and terms for arguments,
Hmm.
and then they confuse them for arguments. Because I mean, of course, you gotta scream, you gotta demonize your opponent to death. You gotta scream at the top of your lungs. If you do it long enough, then you will maybe get somebody to actually believe it. You know, you tell a lie long enough, at some point you'll get people to believe it. But you tell a lie even longer, and then you get someone to live it. So that's just my take on that thing. You tell a lie long enough, eventually someone will believe it. You tell a lie even longer, then you get someone to live it. And let's look up any news today. Any pro-life news, pro-abortion news. Let's see here. Supreme Court overturns Texas law saving tens of thousands of babies from abortion. Yep, people are still defending murder on the legal circles. They're still it's sad, but that's the reason why it's up to people like us to address abortion on a cultural level. We gotta attack the culture to stop this insanity. Let's see what story we got here. All right, let's screen share this story. This is an awesome story right here. Mom pregnant with twins schedules abortion, changes mind at the last minute. 3 years ago, when Rebecca Rizzi became pregnant, she initially wanted to have her baby. But when the father told her to consider other options, Rizzi ended up making in, Rizzi ended up making an appointment to have an abortion at Planned Parenthood. Live Action News reported. In an interview with Glenn Beck in 2014, Rizzi described her situation. I felt like I had to do it, abort. It was a situation where I hadn't talked to my family in a long time. Same with friends. She was 5 weeks pregnant when she called Planned Parenthood. They told her they would provide her with two pills, one to stop the pregnancy and the second to expel the baby. She arrived at Planned Parenthood to pick up the pills. Rizzy passed pro-life activists and sidewalk counselors. She says she believed in their message, but still entered the facility. After sitting in the waiting room for an hour, she went outside and spoke with a counselor. Sherry Pierce, a member of the pro-life ministry Refuge in the Desert, asked about Rizzy and asked Rizzy about her story and why she thought she had to abort. Because of their conversation, Rizzy said she realized the many life affirming options and the support available to her. Sue went to a pregnancy resource center where Rizzy decided to give birth and make an adoption plan for their child. For her child, I mean. Then she discovered she was having twins. At that point, the young mom decided that she wanted to parent her daughters. Pierce continued to support the young mother. She helped Rizzy through her pregnancy, was at the hospital to welcome the twins, and still keeps in close contact with the family. Now the twins are 2.5 years old, and Rizzy told The Blaze that she is thankful for the pro-life activists who stood outside the abortion clinic that day. She describes her joy at choosing life for her daughters. I cannot even begin to imagine my life without my girls. I wouldn't want to. They have been such a blessing, and the honest truth is, if I had an abortion, I likely would have taken my own life as so many post-abortive women do. Bridgie says she wants to share her story to help women considering abortion. She encourages pregnant mothers to choose life-affirming options. To any woman contemplating abortion, I beg you to seek other options. There are many clinics, doctors, organizations, and ministries that dedicate themselves to helping women in your situation. They want to help you. Do not let anyone force or intimidate you into making a choice that cannot be reversed. Pregnancy is temporary. The infant years fly by. The not so terrible twos don't last. Everything is temporary. Death is permanent. Abortion is permanent. Amen to that. That was an awesome story. And people wonder why that I call abortion murder. And people wonder why I do what I do. And I am relentless and I am non-stop in what I do. It is so easy to justify the sick position, which is abortion, when you're not the one, in the womb being chopped up to bits. When you're not the one being killed, at the mercy of um, those who should be protecting you, the mother and her community. The safest place for a child should be in the womb. Instead, it's the most dangerous. It's a sick it's just a sick thing that we have people who has been so thoroughly brainwashed and so thoroughly misled by just you know feelings and pseudo logic and pseudoscience and all sorts of just deceptive crap that people think they can even justify something as bad as this. 2,500 to 3,000 on average dead a single day. About 2,500 to 3,000 are going to die today, and nobody's going to care. They can sit up here talking about terrorist attacks all day, which are beyond tragic, and nobody wants that to happen. But we have things worse, far worse in numbers every single day. We virtually have a World Trade Center attack, you know, sort of thing every single day. Numbers that resemble those who died in the World Trade Center uh, bombing, the plane attack. Around 2,000 to 3,000 people died in that attack.
But on every single day, 2,500 to 3,000 children are killed in the womb. It's like we're having a World Trade Center, you know, type of numbers killing every single day in this country, and nobody says a thing. People aren't waving flags to um, stop this nonsense. People aren't having a moment of silence for all these killed children. None of that. You instead want to just turn a blind eye, act like they don't exist, and act like they don't matter. And more and more people are starting to see that and try to say, no, we can't continue to do this. We can't continue to pretend like these children don't matter. We can't continue to pretend like this isn't a serious issue. We can't continue to pretend like it's okay to say that just because you at a certain level of development that you can just have your life mercilessly taken. More and more people are understanding this, um, and I'm going to do my part in this culture war because this is what we have. We're dealing with a culture war, and we're dealing with a war of paradigms. And to implement big change and implement serious change, the culture has to be shifted towards one that adores and dignifies life, rather than one that simply um, believes it should be taken away because of personal feelings. My mission to fight against this evil is nonstop. It's relentless, and I am here to offend with the truth. Nobody has a right not to be offended. I am here to offend with the truth. I am here to ruffle some feathers. I am here to get under the skin of people who try to justify this evil, and I do not shy away from saying that because maybe then you'll wake up. Maybe then you'll be like, man, maybe he was right all along. And I understand not everybody's going to change their opinion. Some people are going to be set in their opinions and their views to justify murder. I get that. But there's always somebody watching out there. There's always somebody paying attention. Always somebody, who's on the fence, maybe looking for additional answers, trying to seek further information. And ultimately, those are the people that I'm attempting to reach because I understand, again, that a lot of people are not going to leave their positions to justify murder, but then there's those people who will be objective and look at the facts for what they are, and they'll see that you cannot justify this evil, and then the pro-life numbers will continue to grow, and we'll continue to see a shift in the culture. So I believe it is my mission on this earth to be a non-compromising activist to defend these children that are being mercilessly slaughtered because Jesus said, what you have done for the least of these, you have done for me." And people think that they can put it into their hands to kill his children, his young ones, and no, no, absolutely not. And the great thing about being pro-life is you don't even have to be a believer to see how wrong it is. You even have those who are pagans, those who are um, atheists, and a number of different non-Christian um, belief systems of people who are even seeing the evil that abortion is. There was this atheist woman who debated Matt Dillahunty, and she was pro-life. So it is such a important and such a vital thing to see that you do not have to believe in, a higher deity or God or whatever to see that abortion is evil. Even if I were to become an atheist tomorrow, I would still be able to argue my position. That's just how evil abortion is. It doesn't hinge upon any sort of theological belief system. Ultimately, I do believe my mission is from God on this earth to be a voice for the unborn, and I will continue to be that voice. But I was just hypothetically saying that even if I were to become an atheist tomorrow, that's not going to ever happen with me. But just hypothetically speaking, if that were to happen, that would still, not affect my position, not one bit. But yeah, we got a problem in this culture. We got a problem, and the problem is a culture that loves death, the culture that is so obsessed in themselves, a culture that is so obsessed in their immediate gratifications and their immediate solutions to um, their lack of personal responsibility. We have a culture that's embracing death instead of life. And if there aren't voices out there who are going to speak against it, then you're going to have this paradigm. You're going to have this culture that's going to continue justifying killing unborn children. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, people. What's being done now has been done before. And it's not, the first time, or it is not the first time in history we've been having this sort of debate. You can look at abortion to thousands and thousands of years in the past. You can even look at it as even worse than that, to the point to where we're talking about uh, child sacrifice. You know, killing the unborn in the womb, and even taking born babies and burning them and sacrificing them. Just the most sickening of things that extends back thousands and thousands of years. And it's funny. I get a lot of flack, talking about you need to stop your Stone Age, stop trying to shove your Stone Age irrelevant beliefs down other people's throats. Yeah, they have no problem with abortion and appealing to abortion being around for thousands of years. It's just laughable, the hypocrisy of these people. Um, Let me see if we can find any other good stories in the news. All right, let's see. All right, here's a good one. Abortion doc quits when baby keeps breathing after abortion. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Her chest was moving up and down, and pro-aborts like to just ignore stuff like that. This stuff happens all the time. Stories like these are coming out all the time. Former Planned Parenthood abortion facility director Abby Johnson has seen her share of abortion facility workers leave the abortion industry since she herself quit her job at the abortion business. In the new update, Johnson shares the story of an abortion practitioner who recently called it a day, a story that could be the most exceptional she's ever shared. In the story, the former abortion practitioner, who appears to have returned to his Christian faith, shares the experience that shook him to the core and caused him to quit. Asked me why I became a doctor who performed abortions. If I'm honest, the original draw was the money. I didn't have to I didn't have to take call. I didn't have to work any emergencies. There were no overnights. I walked into the clinic, worked a few hours, and walked out with a paycheck for several $1,000s. Over time, I convinced myself that I was part of a noble mission to help women in their time of need. After all, if it wasn't for me, these women would be self-aborted, and that's what we were trying to prevent. I've never talked about why. Excuse me. I've never talked about what I did when asked by my colleagues or even family members. They knew I was a doctor, and that was really all I disclosed. If I was really helping women, I couldn't figure out why I was ashamed of my work. I felt like I should be proud if I was living the narrative I had worked out in my mind. Yet the shame was there. No one in my family dared breach the subject of my employment. All my immediate family knew, of course. There were differences in opinion, so everyone stayed silent. Well, almost everyone. One of my close family members started inviting me to church. I went because I was proud of them and the role they had taken on in ministry. I had grown up in church, but had fallen away from my faith in college. I didn't know what to expect, but surprisingly enjoyed the service. So when they asked me to come again, I agreed, and again, and again. One Sunday after church, this particular family member took me to lunch and confronted me about my work. I could tell it made them very uncomfortable, but I really admired their courage. And to be perfectly honest, I felt challenged. I realized during our talk that I had brought shame and embarrassment to my family. I had taken the job because the money enticed me. I wanted to be able to provide for my family with things. What I realized is that there were no amount of things that I could buy that would make up for the shame I caused them. So then what? I was in a contract with my current employer, and I didn't think there was any way I could get with my job. I figured I would just keep doing what I was doing until my contract ran out. Life changed for me during the 16 to 17-week abortion. I was performing a D&E procedure and had already pulled off both legs of this small human being. Every once in a while, you begin to pull out the fetus, and the majority of the body will come out intact. I began to pull on the torso, and the rest of the body came out whole. The arms, head, and torso were all still attached. I was moving the body to the tray for disposal, and a slight movement caught my eye. I looked up at this tiny chest and saw it moving up and down. Life was outside the woman's womb, even for just a few seconds. And there I was. I was holding this tiny body. An overwhelming remorse flooded my body. I had violently removed this child's legs while she was still alive. I did that. She felt it. I was the last person to hold her alive, yet I was the person who ended her life. In that moment, I was thankful that she didn't have the ability to open her eyes. I wouldn't have wanted my face to be the first one she would have seen. Now, I have hope that the first face she saw was the face of Jesus. That was when I knew I had to leave, no matter the consequences. I would be breaking my contract, and I knew that it would be financially devastating. I didn't know if I would be able to work as a doctor again. I honestly didn't know if I would be able to recover from what I had done. Then I talked to Abby, and there, then I talked to Abby, and then there were none, and I knew there was hope. There was more than hope. I knew this change in my life would soon be a reality. I have since left my job, and I am soon starting a new position at a facility that upholds the sacredness of human life. I have a long way to go. I still have a lot of things to work through, a lot of beliefs that are challenged. I have a lifetime of healing to do, but knowing that I'm not doing it alone, that I have the support of Abby and her ministries helping me put one foot in front of the other. Thank you to everyone who supports this organization. I ask for your prayers during this time, and thank you for helping me and people in similar situations find healing and hope. Wow, there's not really much more I can say about that. It's just that was amazing. And pro-aborts, it's easy for them to talk all this nonsense about supporting abortion and getting behind it and whatnot, but um, a lot of them don't know what a lot of these abortionists really feel and what they really see. These abortions are observing these murders happen all the time. They are doing them. They know what's really happening. They know what they are really doing, and it's easy for the pro-abort who hasn't, who doesn't have to observe that on a regular basis to argue for abortion. But when you actually the one taking life, it's quite a different thing. Really, quite a different thing. You're the one actually doing it. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to show a video of there's a number of different women who were involved in abortion and regret their decisions, and also show a video of another former abortion doctor, Carol Everett. And the thing she says is just to the one truly seeking truth and knowledge and um, honestly looking at the situation, the words she says it's just eye opening. So give me just a sec to get that video. Here we go. It's called Abortion Provider Speaks. All right. Let's run this back a little bit. It's about 17 minutes long, but it's very important.
We had a whole plan that sold abortions, and it was called sex education. Break down their natural modesty, separate them from their parents and their values, and become the sex expert in their life so they turn to us. And we would give them a low-dose birth control pill they would get pregnant on, or a defective condom, because we didn't buy the most expensive condoms. We bought the cheapest condoms. Our goal was 3 to 5 abortions from every girl between the ages of 13 and 18. We gave them a low-dose birth control pill that in order to provide any level of activity had to be taken at the same time every single day. The girl wouldn't take it accurately, and if you miss that thing, the protection is out of her system. The sexual activity goes from 0 or once a week to 5 to 7 times a week. She doesn't take the pill properly. She gets pregnant. And who does she call when she's pregnant? She calls us. We're the experts. And we were ready. We used a script designed to overcome every single objection. That's what sales is. Overcome the objection and you get the order, in this case, the abortion. And when she calls, the first question is reassure. And so the girl confesses, I think I may be pregnant. And the counselor, who's really a telemarketer, that's all they're trying to do, sell over the telephone, but we call them counselors, says, we can take care of your problem. No one needs to know. And then the first question, what's the first day of your last normal period? And she gives this so-called counselor the date, and she says you're 8 weeks pregnant. She didn't say you might be 8 weeks pregnant. She didn't say you could be. She said you are 8 weeks pregnant. So she has planted the first seed in this long marketing thread. And the sad thing is, in this girl's mind, she is the expert. This is the pregnancy expert. And the next question is this good news or bad news? If it were good news, she would not be calling an abortion clinic. It's bad news. And when she replies bad news, this counselor moves right in because now she wants to identify the fear, to use it to reaffirm that abortion decision anytime that girl moves away. And if she says, well, maybe I need to think about this, your parents will kill you, you'll have to miss drill team, the abortion's over. Now, abortions are done through all 9 months of pregnancy, not because of Roe v. Wade, but because of Doe v. Volpe that said for the health of the mother, an abortion can be completed through all 9 months of pregnancy. But the problem was that health was defined as mental health. And we would say to this scared young woman, you would have problems with this pregnancy should you carry it to term, wouldn't you? She'd say yes, and we'd chart it emotional health.
While these lawyers were calling for the right of choice for women, where's the choice when only one option is offered? That's an essential fallacy to choose. In most cases, it's not a choice at all. A decision is reached without all the facts or based on misinformation.
That voice you're hearing right now, that's Alveda King. She is Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece. I'm speaking against abortion.
Other options are not presented, and a deadly course of action is forced on a woman.
We have to talk about something that uses lies, coercion.
The number one slogan for abortion is pro-choice. And the ironic thing about that slogan is that when you ask women who had abortions, why did you have that abortion? Number one response is, I felt that I had no choice. A majority, maybe upwards of 80% of abortions in America happen with some form of coercion. In other words, not the woman's choice.
I had this one lady that called me one afternoon. She said that she wanted to make an appointment for her daughter to come in and have an abortion. I said, does she want to have the abortion?
This lady right here, she was the woman that was exploited, to bring abortion on demand into the Roe v. Wade ruling. She actually never even gotten an abortion at all, and for a long time, she adopted the pro-choice position. But they shamefully exploited, her ordeal to justify abortion and to make it legal in the law. And now she's a very, very active pro-lifer. So yeah, it's so many people that they've been exploiting to just build their case and build their sick murder culture.
Well, it's not her choice. She said that she
Women's choice.
I had this one lady that called me one afternoon. She said that she wanted to make an appointment for her daughter to come in and have an abortion. I said, does she want to have the abortion? Well, it's not her choice.
So I went to a counselor, a Christian counselor. She kept saying I needed to have an abortion, and this was not a good thing for me to do, and it wasn't going to be good for my kids. Then I told my fiance, then I told my mother, then I told my other family members. All of a sudden, everybody's like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you don't want to do this is not good for the kids, this is not good for you, this is not good for our marriage, I don't want to raise this child.
Would have been somebody who would have changed the dynamic of our family. And the relationships that they would have created would have changed everyone that they interacted with. But they're not here.
In abortion, it's not about choice, it's about despair.
It's not about people who are getting abortions because of freedom of choice. It's about people getting abortions because they feel they have no freedom and no choice.
Through conversations with him pushing the abortion, and then that kind of frustrated me at some point. I just felt, I don't know, I just felt like he didn't care about me, that he was just thinking about, like, let's fix this. That's what exactly his words. We need to fix this.
That I was in fear and in crisis, and at that point that I felt like I had no choice.
Women are the victims. In a lot of these cases, women are coerced and in crisis mode and regret the decision that they've made.
Women feel threatened that if they don't have an abortion, their lives will be punished for it. The stories of the boyfriend saying, I'll give you the $300 and our relationship will continue if you have the abortion. If you choose to keep the baby, there's the door.
I was dating a young man and we got pregnant. And the first words out of his mouth to me were, "You're not having it, are you?" And I remember that sinking feeling in my heart, and I thought, well, no, I guess not. And I felt so much pressure.
Absolutely do not think that my choice was a choice. I think it was, like I said before, I think it felt like an ultimatum.
They're all screaming at me. It felt like they were screaming at me. They were constantly insisting, you've got to kill him, you've got to abort him, you can't do this, you've got to go to the clinic, you've got to hurry up. Every week that you wait is making it worse. Go, 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 go. And I finally couldn't take all of their pressure and how supposedly I'm going to make everybody's life miserable. It was relentless. It was like I couldn't even go through the day without hearing them, whether they were actually speaking to me or I'm just remembering something they said to me a couple of hours ago. I mean, they just bombarded me with it. So I guess I have to bear this burden so that everybody else can.
We had a 12-year-old. She came in chewing her gum and looked so carefree. She had her abortion. She came back 2 weeks later for her checkup. Didn't come out of the room, opened the door, and she was in there. She brought in a piece of glass and slitting her wrist. 12 years old.
But we all have that moment where we realize that we are moms and we killed our children. It's pretty sick. It's a sick feeling.
Warnings are rarely offered. Women are seldom told the full story of what they're getting into when they authorize an abortionist to kill the baby inside of them. Even if the known consequences and after effects like breast cancer, barrenness, and other female trauma, even if it only impacts half the women or a quarter of the women, wouldn't it be better to let them know what they might suffer from their choice? Wouldn't it?
Hold on a sec, I'm getting a call. Hold on. All right.
Still be wise to let them know every potential risk. The government mandates warnings on every other potential danger. Every pack of cigarettes, every alcoholic beverage, every package of medication carries a warning of potential health risks. Why not a warning on something so life-changing, so life-threatening as an abortion?
There's a lot of evidence of physical and psychological consequences. Then there was a big study out of New Zealand about 2 years ago that showed long-term consequences.
Abortion can have long-term consequences on the woman in terms of affecting her fertility.
Many women become infertile. They suffer from other problems with their female organs and end up having to have complete hysterectomies, never able to conceive or have other children. One of our ladies, the power of the suction machine from the abortion was so severe that it caused her fallopian tubes to collapse and she was never able.
I wasn't in for all of that abortion. Somebody else was in there with him. But I went in toward the end and I'd never seen that much blood. I mean, just blood everywhere. And we put her in the recovery room and she just filled the bed. And we changed the bed a couple of times.
Well, she's talking about the girl that slit her wrist. She had mentioned there was a girl who slit her wrist, and this was the same girl she's talking about here.
And her fit. We put her in the recovery room, and she just filled the bed. And we changed the bed a couple of times, and her blood pressure was erratic. And the doctor left. I was really worried about her, and I tried to call him. And her boyfriend kept wanting to go home, and her blood pressure stabilized a little bit. But I just didn't believe she was, it's just like that feeling you have that she's not right. Well, at 10 o'clock, the boyfriend said, look, if there's anything happens, I'll call you immediately. And at 4:30, he called the doctor, and he didn't take the history, and he said put her in a tub of hot water, and when he did, the last little bit of blood in her body ran out. And he called me about 6 and said she's dead. And he immediately started telling me how he was going to do the cover-up. Somehow it all worked out, and the autopsy didn't show anything, and no charges were filed, and nothing happened. The newspapers didn't call, nobody came. We killed that woman and did abortions the next morning. The families are so hurt by what's happened and shamed that their daughter had this abortion and died from it or whatever. They don't come forward. We had one girl, 22 years old, a model, who danced in, jumped up on the table, laughed at the doctor that she didn't wear underwear. She was 22 weeks pregnant. We put her on the table. Now, there's a maneuver called the Hansen's maneuver. Now, the doctor may do it himself, or someone may do it, but I did it for the big baby, 2 of our big baby abortions. I held the babies, and you say the head's here, the feet are here, the buttocks are here, and you gently push the baby down into the instruments. And the first time this doctor went in, he pulled out omentum. That's the lining to the intestines. He literally perforated her uterus and was pulling her bowel out her uterus with the very first time he went in with the instruments. And the second time he went in, he pulled out her bowel and he pushed it back in. Live baby. Woke the woman up, put her in my car because it's terrible, terrible advertisement to think about having an ambulance in front of an abortion clinic. You just don't want it. So we put her in my car, and we didn't take her to the hospital nearest us. We didn't take her to the hospital that would take the best care of her. We took her across town to a hospital that would help us cover up what we'd done. And this surgeon has taken this girl who has a perfectly complete baby inside her with her bowel pulled out her vagina upstairs to the operating room. 7 doctors operated on that baby, on that girl. They had to do a colostomy to resection her bowel to empty into this bag. They pulled the baby out. He rolled it into the disposable drapes and put it into the incinerator at the hospital. All 7 of those doctors falsified the records. We killed that baby that way. The doctors falsified the records. We told that girl she had an abdominal pregnancy. They have worked very hard to learn how to get Medicaid funds, and they want to increase their tax funding to $700 million a year. Abortion is a skillfully marketed product sold to a very frightened person in crisis. They buy that product expecting a fix and find it's defective. We put a clinic out on 30. It paid for itself in the first month. It was a profit center, and we were well on the way to opening more clinics. As a matter of fact, our plan was to open 3 abortion clinics in 1983 so I could be a millionaire in 1984. They came in for 2 or 3 hours and wanted to do 20 abortions or 30 abortions and make their money and go away. They didn't care if the instruments weren't clean, and they didn't care if the instruments weren't cool. They just wanted to get their money and get through the day and go. There was a receipt on the chart. They would collect them, bring them up at the front at the end of the day. We would balance them, pay them in cash, no 1099, no W-2. But I'm certain people killing babies for a living probably reported it to IRS, don't you think? We knew how many people, how many calls they got, and what their percentage of completion was. And their raises were based on the percentage of completed abortions. And they got bonuses. And very quickly, it was no longer about selling abortions to other women. It was about money. I saw the potential to make great money. I answered the phone at home at night so we wouldn't miss an abortion. But she is allowed to watch her pregnancy test turn positive or negative, and they would point to a chart on the wall and say, this is a positive test and this is a negative test. And if it's positive, we trained our people to reach over and grab the bony part of her elbow and squeeze.
And this is why the Bible says the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil.
You see, she's confused. She's hurting. She's just gotten this news that she's pregnant, and she's upset. So you grab the bony part of her elbow and squeeze to get her attention and say, if you have your money, we can take care of this right now. We knew if she went home and talked about it, her support system might help her and might tell her abortion wasn't the answer, but if she just did it right then, it was taken care of. But a certain percentage of those pregnancy tests are negative. They're not all positive. And remember, it costs the same amount of money to get a non-pregnant one in as it does a pregnant one. So if her test was negative, we had a different sales technique. We said, this test is negative. But you know, this test is not sensitive enough to pick up a very early pregnancy. You could still be pregnant and this test would be negative. And you want to know for sure today, don't you? And she would say yes. And we'd say, okay, we have another test we can do. We will just do this sonogram. And we put her on that table as I could put any man, woman, or child on that table. And I could find a pregnancy. You see, all you have to do is find a blob. And everyone's abdomen has a blob. And this girl doesn't know what a pregnant uterus looks like versus a negative one, so you just find a little blob in the abdomen. You flip it around and say, see there it is, you're pregnant. She's shocked. You grab the bony part of her elbow and say, if you have your money, we can just take care of it. You know, we were doing 20, 30 abortions an hour if we could, at least 20. We had 21 sets of instruments. That's all we had. So we couldn't possibly bring those instruments out, clean them, sterilize them, bring the temperature up in the sterilizer and then 20 minutes sterilization and then cool them down. Our complication rate at the end of my time, last 18 months, was when about 1 out of every 500 had a major life-changing surgery or died. We had one woman die. But because there are no real statistics, and if you can cover it up, you don't report it, and none of ours were ever reported. So we don't really know. The big hospital in Dallas will tell you, the doctors will tell you that they saw botched abortions or see botched abortions all the time. One of the reasons we were able to regulate the abortion clinics in Texas was because of the bad abortionists that have been reported. I mean, one girl died and they went in to examine the clinic and they were using rusted instruments and had no sterilizer and no hot water. But no one talks about what happens inside the abortion clinic. And everyone fights. It's the most chaotic place you can imagine. The doctors fight, the nurses fight, everybody's taking drugs, everybody's drinking. It's, you know, they're having an affair. I recognized I've been involved in the death of 35,000 babies. The murder of one woman who bled to death from a second trimester abortion. 19 women who'd had hysterectomies or colostomies. And never had one appeared in the newspapers, no lawsuit. But the thing I couldn't deal with was the fact that I had taken the life of my own child by abortion. You can't deal with death and lies on a daily basis without being greatly affected by it. And nobody worked in that clinic that didn't go to the back and put babies' parts together. And even if you didn't put the parts together, there were times when you walked back there and they were on a towel. Delivering a head is very, very difficult, even at, say, 20 weeks. I mean, I had one abortionist keep a girl on the table for 6 hours trying to crush a head. He couldn't do it.
I felt them taking parts out of my body. Yeah, I've spent the better part of 20 years trying not to remember that, but I do.
Nobody knows what goes on.
Oh, that's it. This isn't a game, people, alright? This, you can't justify this evil. You can't do it. I don't care who you are. And people wonder why. I have very little patience for pro-aborts because that's what they are. They're not, I wouldn't even say the majority of them are pro-choice at all. When you don't really do your research and you don't see the writing on the wall, this is the ignorance that you end up justifying. This is the evil you end up supporting. But the saddest thing is, even after you show a lot of these facts and information, you'll still have people still justifying the insanity. It's just it's just maddening. Hi Haley, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. Did you see any of the video I just showed?
I saw the later part, yeah.
Okay. What did you think? Do you have anything to say about that or anything else or what?
That was just terrible, and I never see pro-aborts telling the stories of women like those. It's
Of
so
course,
sad.
and they're not. Of course, they're uh, they're an Achilles heel to their position. Of course, they're not going to tell the stories of those women. Um, they'll just try to use one of their stock talking points. Something to the degree of, well, probably some pro-lifer like deceive them into feeling that way or some stupid crap like that, or that that if she feels regret or pain and whatnot, then that's her problem, not theirs. I've actually have heard a lot of pro boards do that, and it's disgusting.
Wow.
hmm it's disgusting.
Hey, Hawktie.
Mm. I gotta broadcast them, so yeah. Yeah, this isn't a game. This There is no way you can justify this insanity. There's no way you can justify killing a child in the womb. You can try to ignore it however many ways you wish. Um, you could try to philosophize it, if that's even a word, however you want to. You're not going to be able to do it. You cannot justify the unjustifiable when you've had people who went to the most horrific degrees to justify, to cover it up, and this is all a product of this sick culture that embraces death.
And there are people out there who will say any nonsensical thing to try to justify it.
hmm You get cases like this to where a lot of the times these women's stories aren't told. The ones that have experienced firsthand. Like I read a story before you came in here of this abortionist who did observe what he was doing firsthand, and he had to on a daily basically suppress his conscience and on a daily try to convince himself all the time that what he was doing was a good service to women and society. And this is not an isolated story. You got abortionists who do this stuff all the time. They have to daily convince themselves that they're doing a good service. They have to reassure themselves all the time that what they're doing is not wrong and what they're doing is beneficial to the world. And
ignoring facts doesn't make them go away.
that's right. When it all comes down to it, I just think about that human being in the womb and what's happening to that human with an abortion procedure. I just connect those two things, and that is all I need to say that this should not be tolerated in any capacity.
Can I ask, what do we take away from? I was listening while you were playing clips from that documentary that include extensive interviews from Carol Everett.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, her name's Everett. Carol Everett. What do we take away from that?
I mean, I don't really think you can take away anything else other than this is a freaking sick, culture that embraces death, and we should not be legally justifying this insanity. I don't really think you can take away anything other than that away from it. I mean, if you can look at that and still justify the nonsense, then I don't really know what to say.
Well, I think it would be, sorry, just one sec. I had a cough mid-sentence there. I think it would be difficult to the point of impossible to try to justify or come up with, rationalize or come up with any justification for the types of events that she describes. I mean, sort of what I picked up from that was she was describing, like, essentially lying to patients to get them to come in for an abortion procedure, either lying about how far along they were, or even in some cases whether they were pregnant or not, like actually scheduling abortions for women who aren't pregnant. It's just, there's no, I mean, we've talked a couple of times about the ideas of, when you form social policy, you got to think about weighing, one good against another, or weighing one harm against another, weighing one person's rights against another person's rights. I mean, these can be difficult issues. But when you look at the types of things she was talking about, in my mind, there's no conceivable moral justification for lying to patients. Just to pick one example, and not even nearly the most gruesome example, but lying to a patient to say, yeah, you're pregnant and you really should come in for an abortion, and then performing like abortion-like procedures when the person isn't even patient. Like, there's just simply no good that is addressed by doing that kind of thing. I mean, it's funny in a not humorous sort of way, but it's like those exposés they do on like those oil change places, that once you get in there, they're like, oh, your headlight fluid is corroded into your bindle rotor. It's going to cost $400 to fix that, and of course they don't really do that. More realistically, they actually tell people that, like, there's something wrong with your differential fluid and we'll have to replace that, but they actually don't do the replacement. They just charge you for it. And it's sort of like that, except what could be more morbid than applying that sort of, taking somebody who's in a vulnerable state and saying, yeah, well, we're going to lie to you about this, and then we're going to lie about what service we'll perform, and we're going to take your money and run. I mean, it's just inconceivably atrocious.
Yeah, but sadly but surely, these types of practices are not even unusual. Like time and time again, I'm seeing these sorts of stories of people who actually work in the field who observe this type of stuff on a regular basis. It's not like it's just one person saying this, who used to work in the field.
No, I think it's exactly like it's one person saying this. I think that's exactly the situation. I mean, there certainly are other stories.
That is absolutely false, though.
It's not just one person. Let's be clear. Let's be clear in what we're talking about too. Is that we're not talking about
what we're talking about. It's not just one person saying these sorts of egregious things have happened behind, these.
No, I know. I'm talking about a specific thing. I'm talking about her operation of, like, her whole business is just being based on this deceit and scam. You've not got anyone else that reports having operated in a clinic like that. You haven't even got other people from that operation that have backed up the story. Now, so to be clear, I'm not saying that there are just no other horror stories, because there are plenty.
Of course they're not going to come forward, dude. Of course they're not going to come forward. Who would want to come forward on something that sickening?
Well, at some point, you think there would have been a way to catch these people. Like, one thing I find weird about her story is her recounting of a lot of those events include confessing to several very, very serious crimes. And I don't just mean like unethical practice, but I mean like you need to go to jail kind of crimes, both at the state level and the federal level. Her story in particular about, I believe she was describing a Hansen maneuver gone wrong, where they perforated a woman's bowel, and then they transported her through not an approved means to another hospital. And at this other hospital, 7 doctors assisted in a cover-up, which included removing the fetus and putting it into an incinerator and not reporting that any of this had happened. I mean, there's 8 doctors right there that all need to have a lifelong ban from practicing medicine and perhaps even do jail time. And I mean, again, I won't hang my hat on, well, that story has to be made up, because that's the thing too about when people embark on an agreement to cover up a crime. If they're successful, if it's a small enough group and they're successful in covering up the crime, then years later you can say, well, then why did nobody ever get caught for this crime? Well, if they were successful in covering it up, well, then they were successful in covering it up. But I mean, that was just one story among many of these things. And there's, I mean, how could this not have ever come to light, except through her, current evangelism on this topic, and no investigations, right? Like, I mean, there must be. I mean, I suppose that would sort of play into your view that just simply, like, somebody can come out and say, oh, yeah, we were doing this all the time, and everyone's going to shrug their shoulders and not do any investigations. I find that not very plausible myself, I would say.
Well, I mean, that's the issue right there, man. A lot of people don't think it's very, very plausible at all, but you gotta understand, there's a whole lot of connections and lobbying that's connected with all these sorts of issues. I mean, it's just like how a lot of cover-ups and whatnot happen in politics all the time that don't ever get reported. Like, for example, there's a lot of things, surrounding Hillary Clinton, for example, that have been covered up, or haven't been brought to light to just bring her to justice just yet. And you got a lot of people that have a lot of connections or involved in many different circles. So you're going to have issues to where certain things that should be brought to light that sadly are not.
Yeah, no, and that's why I say I wouldn't hang my hat on that. And plus, it certainly wouldn't be fair of me to challenge you to say, like, you give me an example of a serious crime that was committed that was never exposed. I mean, that's laughable, right? I mean, how could you do that, right? Obviously, I do believe that these things happen, that they're very serious crimes that are covered up and they never come to light. And the reason why neither of us would be equipped to think of an example is because they never came to light. So why don't we just say, I mean, because even if her specific stories aren't true, or if they're, it's not that I would say they're even not true. I would say there's elements that I think quite plausibly she's exaggerating, but there's no doubt in my mind that she was involved in a pretty heinous enterprise. That they were doing things. They said, look, we've got a product here that makes some money for us, and here's how we're going to market that product. Here's what we're going to do. And in hindsight, she certainly has a lot of regret about a lot of the choices they made. Why don't we just say, for the sake of discussion, that what she said happened, every word of it. My question is, well, then what? Like, what do we take away from that? Let's say that everything she says is true. Then what?
Well, I would say then we need to have a serious conversation on why it even got to this point. We need to have a serious conversation on what kind of culture are we embracing for these sorts of things to even happen to begin with.
Yeah, that's.
And I think at the heart of all this insanity is just the lack of respect for human life, and unfortunately, that gets it leaks into a whole bunch of other areas. Just sadly, when you are doing things like devaluing human life, there's nothing to stop you from engaging on all sorts of other types of evils. I think that's the serious conversation that we need to have.
Well, you're speaking kind of broadly, so I'm not sure who you're referring to there. Like, I mean, I'll tell you what I hear when I listen to something like that. Is I hear that, like, in any system, it doesn't matter what's at the heart of that system. As soon as you bring in more players into it, there's always the potential for somebody else to game the system in a way that is unfair, and in some cases, like particularly with healthcare, that's just like outright atrocious. And you know, I mean, I sort of before was sort of half in jest, sort of remarking about how that sort of scam is like these oil change scams, but with the recognition that like this is just on a completely different scale. I mean, you know, I'd be angry at somebody who, you know, if I found out, oh no, they ripped me off, they didn't really do this transfer case fluid replacement, like I'd be angry because somebody's lying to you, they're defrauding you, just for a few bucks, like that. But this is so much worse. It's like there's not even a scale of comparison for how much worse it is. But
so are you trying to tell me that this sort of thing is so much more worse than, you know, chopping a baby in the womb to death?
I think it's much worse. I think it's absolutely much worse.
So people covering up for murder is like so much more worse than, let's say, chopping a born infant to death.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I don't even know that that's. I would be curious to see how you would sort of pit one against the other.
No, I say they equally as horrifying. I don't know how you would say covering up for murder is worse than the actual murder of, let's say, a born infant being chopped up to death. I don't really
okay. I see what you mean. Okay, well, because there's the initial value judgment of it. Is this a murder? I mean, if some people conspired to, you know, to go kill a fetus, you know, we're gonna get some pregnant woman and either with her consent or without her consent, we're going to, and we can even make it that much more vile. Let's take like a 2-month-old baby. So we conspire to go and say, we're going to go out and we're going to kill this baby and chop up the pieces and just get rid of it somehow. Well, of course, second to that, you know, we don't want to go to jail, so we're going to figure out some sort of plan. You say you were here, I'll say I was there, and we're going to embark in some sort of conspiracy. I would say that in that case, you know, the murder itself is much worse than the straightforward and obvious conspiracy agreement to cover it up and to not admit that, not tell people that we've done such a thing. I think that's pretty obvious, but I think there's an important and reasonable distinction to be made between murdering an infant versus performing an abortion in a fashion that is consistent with the laws of that state.
Of course, you're going to think that as long as you value the life of the unborn from the outside. Of course, you're going to think that.
No, I do value the life of the unborn. But that's sorry. Did you say that I don't? Is that what you were saying?
I don't think you do. You said you were pro-choice, didn't you?
Yeah, but sorry. I'm sorry. So you're saying I don't value the life of the unborn?
I don't think you do. I mean, saying you're pro-choice in any capacity.
No. You know, sorry, I got to ask the question a third time because I really want you to think about your answer. You're saying that I don't value the life of the unborn?
Do you justify for any reason the killing intentionally of the unborn or not?
Yes, I do think there exists justification for doing so on some occasions.
That would be just like saying you think there should be rape permissible in any context, but saying that you value the raped person.
I can't imagine what justification there would be for rape, or I don't know that if somebody were to come up with a justification for rape, that would mean that they think rape is always okay.
Come on,
I mean,
man.
do you
rape is wrong, period. I mean, if you don't think it should be justifiable in any context whatsoever, then
which I don't, yeah.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, if you think there are some situations to where it's okay to brutally, intentionally chop an unborn baby apart to death.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna get you to say 2 words here. In a minute, you're gonna go, yeah, but Antonio, are there any circumstances? Like you don't kill people. You're not someone inclined to. Okay. Are there? What about somebody's breaking into your house and like it's been in the news lately that this person breaks into people's houses and tortures their family? like over a period of hours, and there's like a photo with a guy, and the guy breaks into the house, and you're like, man, that's the guy that's been doing this, and he comes into your house, and you happen to have a gun, and you got position on him, and you can just shoot him on the spot right there. Would you do it?
I would give him a warning. I would give him a warning to leave the
Yeah,
premises.
he's crazy. He's crazy. He's not going to do that. He's coming at you. You got 2 seconds to decide.
And that's, I think, there would be a weighing effect as to which that would be justifiable.
Okay, so since you can envision any set of circumstances where you would end a human life, am I in a good position right now to conclude that you put no value on human life?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely a good argument. But the difference is that that's not the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing. You're right.
Wait, stop. That's not the same thing as intentionally going to a clinic and let's say you conceive in consensual sex, but you were not ready to have a child at that time, and you go into the clinic and take the child out.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. I didn't say they were the same thing.
But you would argue abortion in a circumstance like that, would you not?
No, I'm saying
at the earliest point of pregnancy.
I'm saying that there do exist justifications for it. But what I'm asking you about, Antonio,
justifications are there for abortion?
I want you to clear this up because
what justifications?
No, I want you, because before this can continue, I want you to be sure you're clear in what you're saying. You're telling me, and I've asked you 3 times. You're telling me that it's your understanding that I don't see any value in the lives of the unborn.
I think if you
you said I don't value. Sorry, I used the wrong words there.
I think if you would allow for even one case to intentionally, take the life of the unborn, like again in the case I described, the woman wasn't ready to have a child, so she got an abortion. I think if for any reason you think that should be legal, then I cannot see how you would value the life of the unborn.
That's unfortunate. I had actually thought better of your position on this issue. I mean, I guess, do you not think it's even possible that a person can still value the lives of the unborn?
No, I think it's just a bunch of subjective nonsense. I think it's saying, well, it's okay in this situation, but it's not okay in another situation. But that's dealing with someone who's clearly, intended to do harm and murder is not the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing. I understand that, and I never said it was the same thing. It is the same in the important characteristic. Why I drew the analogy, because it's identical in the sense. Analogies always work that way. Analogies are always, or comparisons are always as good as far as they go.
There's no sense analogous because it's not like the unborn.
No, it is because.
No, wait a minute. It's not like the unborn just jumped into a woman's uterus and holding it hostage for its well-being. No, it's not the same thing in any sense.
You certainly, and I didn't say it's the same thing. Every time, Antonio, every time you say that it's not the same thing, I'm going to remind you that I never said it was the same thing.
Okay, so why are you arguing the point?
Because I'm trying to come to understand how you came to the conclusion that I don't value the lives of the unborn. And the justification that you've provided for that position. I mean, and I'm surprised. I'm going to tell you honestly, Antonio, I'm genuinely surprised to hear you say that, given that we've had conversations where I've told you that this is a great concern. This is something that weighs heavily for me. That I mean, if I just thought, well, the unborn was nothing, it's just a lump of cells, whatever, throw them in the garbage can. If that were my attitude, this just would not be a difficult issue for me. So given that I've expressed that to you several times, then for you to just tell me that you've come to the conclusion that I don't value the lives of the unborn, it just makes me wonder, well, how do you come to that conclusion? When I asked you to explain what I said, do you really believe that of my position? You said that if I can think of even one example where I would, where the intentional killing of the unborn is justified under the circumstances, that means it's reasonable to conclude that I don't value the life of the unborn. So then you gave me an example.
What circumstance? No, hold on. We need to find out what circumstance that you think, and we would need to investigate what circumstance
that you think it would be appropriate to intentionally take the life of the unborn? What circumstance or circumstances? That's what we would need to investigate then.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, because that's what I was. I really wanted to clear up this issue about your view about my assessment of the unborn. I mean, I actually think what you said was so awful about my position that it merits apology. If you're not inclined to correct yourself or to apologize, that's fine. We'll move on. Because I did tell you on occasion. I did say that I would be happy that it's a difficult topic, but I'd be happy to come in and talk about justification. So we can move past your point and just.
I'll tell you what. If we investigate that and you illustrate to me what your position is, then based on what you say, I could be entirely incorrect. I completely accept that. So why don't we investigate that and see?
You are incorrect, and I think you should just accept it, because you don't know what's in my mind or my heart.
All right, let's
find out. I think that's one of the most offensive things a guy can do. Okay. So in terms of circumstances where it'd be appropriate, there are a spectrum, and I'm gonna start with an example that you and I've actually talked about this before, about how I've said I don't think that the abortion debate is really in this camp, but it's because there's a whole spectrum of justification that goes right from this is a very, very serious thing, that this pregnancy threatens the mother's life, all the way up to the other end of like, well, I don't really feel like having a kid, and I don't really feel like using condoms, and I don't really feel like, whatever, using any sort of birth control. I'll just keep going for abortions. So there's a broad spectrum in there, and I think that this issue for a lot of people comes to kind of a where do you draw the line issue. I want to start with the easy stuff, because that stuff is I'm intentionally dodging the hard stuff. I'm going to admit to that, because when we get to the harder ones, but just to prove that. So when I say there exists some justification, so let's go to the more extreme one. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let's bundle them. Let's say that a 11-year-old girl becomes pregnant because she was forcibly sexually assaulted by her 15-year-old brother and impregnated, and the two of them happen to be carriers. They're heterozygous for a particular really severe genetic disorder that's like crippling, and neither of them express this condition because they're heterozygous for it. So they do have one normal gene and then one of this other gene, but one quarter when they combine, or what I mean. So the brother and sister each are carriers of this thing, which means one quarter of their offspring will be homozygous for this very dangerous gene, and that person will express it. And we have confirmed at the earliest stage, say in the first month of pregnancy, yes, she's pregnant, and yes, the baby is actually homozygous for this very, very seriously deleterious trait that these two people are both carriers for. And the pregnancy is ectopic, so if it doesn't move, it's going to end up killing her anyway. So I just bundled a whole bunch of them together. And the simple solution to this is a surgical removal of the zygote. It's not yet a fetus because it hasn't implanted. It's implanted in the. But yeah, surgical removal of the zygote. That is aborting the pregnancy surgically. What do you think of that one?
Would you think? Well, first of all, would you think cases outside of these outside of such instances should be banned entirely?
Well, why don't we talk about
for example? I will discuss that example, but I have to ask you: do you think, first of all, cases outside of that should be banned entirely?
It should be banned?
Yes.
No. I do. I mean, this is a pretty extreme. I mean, the example I'm giving is obviously pretty extreme and contrived. I sort of on the spot here tried to combine as many of the little tropes that people throw in this discussion all into one thing. I think I got them all: the rape, the incest, the genetic disorder, ectopic pregnancy. I don't know. You do this debate more than I do, so you probably know of a couple that I missed. But I tried to package a whole bunch of them into one, and it's obviously a very contrived circumstance. And yeah, I do believe that there are situations that don't contain all of those elements, or even situations that don't contain any of those elements, where it would still be justified to permit and perform the abortion. So I mean, this is why I was saying to you before. I think it's goofy when people come in and say, "Well, what about rape cases?" As if somehow, if you acknowledge that in rape that, well, that does justify it. Well, then what? Okay, well, now what we've got is an argument for justification of abortion in rape cases, and then what? Prohibition in other cases? So anyway, I'm sorry, Antonio, I want to answer your question. You asked, should it be banned for everything? So I'm giving you this really peculiar case. You're asking, should it be banned for things outside this case? And I'm saying, for many of those, yes, but no, it's not. That there would exist cases where it'd be justified outside of this really narrow, goofy thing I just.
So if it has nothing to do with, let's say, I don't know, rape or a life-threatening instance, you do think there would be at least one case outside of cases like those that would be justifiable, correct?
Yeah, but sure, yeah, but you in this case, again, I've always remember we're on the same team when it comes to this thing about people arguing for abortion in cases of rape, and then somehow thinking that gives them traction towards arguing for abortion elsewhere.
Yes,
the only reason,
right?
But the only reason I bring it up in this discussion is because you asked me for an example of a case that would be justified, and I started by saying, well, there's a whole spectrum. Let me start with the easy ones. So I mean, would you? Well, so let's talk about this one, which I think is sort of a fairly easy one. You got an incest rape victim of a girl that's far too young to even plausibly consider like a birth to term. And if this is a successful delivery, it's going to be probably a premature baby with all sorts of terrible problems, or maybe it's ectopic and just going to kill her anyway, or whatever. It's just like I picked like the most extreme circumstance. Would you agree that the surgical abortion would be ethically appropriate?
You mean if it would like put her life in danger?
Well, we can
It's not gonna put her life in danger. Or are you trying to go off the argument that she was like trying to package all those things into one here?
Yeah, maybe that didn't help. Maybe I made it too crazy. Whatever one. I mean, are there any cases that you would consider justified? Because I'm looking for the.
All right.
I'm looking for what I'm doing. I'm looking for the common ground before wading into the first area where we disagree. Because remember, actually, there's two common grounds here. There might be a common ground where you would agree that the determination is appropriate. I don't know. I don't know if you do or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like to distinguish termination as opposed to intentional killing. I make that distinction.
Well, no, this would be an intentional killing.
Yeah. Based on the research that I've done, and I've looked into this extremely deep, I've not found a single case to where they would be like, okay, we would need like we would need to like literally surgically chop the unborn inside the mother to save her life. I've never found a single case to where that was even the solution to her life-threatening ordeal.
Okay, well, again, you seem to be skirting away from the example. You asked for a specific example, and I've given you one. You seem to be moving away from it, and probably my fault because we're making it complicated.
Well, this is a hypothetical. Well, this is a hypothetical, though. I mean,
okay. Well, to go to the real ones. I know I've heard that argument before, where people say, well, what if the pregnancy jeopardizes the woman's health? Generally speaking, late-term abortions that would serve to put the mother's health in jeopardy. They're really, really rare. I would think that most doctors, even doctors that do OBGYN regularly, could go their whole career without ever seeing one. And I sort of strain to even think of an example. I think the woman in Ireland that actually did die because of the hospital's refusal to do an abortion is actually an effective demonstration of that happening. And sadly effective demonstration, because she actually did die. I think that's sad. But having said that, that's super rare.
I actually looked into that case, and they actually had a very lengthy report that was done on her condition, and nowhere in the report did it say that if we're talking about intentional killing, nowhere in the report did it say anywhere in there that would have saved her life. And there was a pretty lengthy report, and I looked into it, and nowhere in the report did it say like intentionally killing the unborn child inside of her would have saved her life. Nowhere in the report anywhere did it say that.
But sorry, are you then claiming that she was going to die either way?
What's that?
Sorry, are you? Okay, what I hear you telling me, again, I'm very careful to not misrepresent what someone is saying.
It was a blood condition, it was sepsis. She had a blood condition. She died because there was a severe lack of oversight in her case. And in her particular instance, the laws actually did allow termination, but there was just a whole lot of things that went wrong, and that was just one of those rare, just really, really bad cases to where it was a lot of stuff that was miscommunicated, um, and unfortunately, she died from it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the investigation into the facts, around her death, nowhere in the actual report did it say that, intentionally killing her baby would have saved her life.
Again, I'm not sure what you're expecting here. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. They can't. The report can report on things that actually happened, and can report on opinions that were actually formed at the time. But the report can't conclude that, well, if things would have been different, then this would have happened. I mean, that's would be. You just wouldn't see that.
So we don't know for sure if intentional killing would have saved their life or not.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Are you saying then? Okay, what I hear you saying, because I'm careful not to misrepresent, is what I hear you saying is that the report doesn't expressly state that she would have survived had she had the abortion. And what I'm asking is, and I would believe that to be the case. I mean, the report wouldn't say, oh, well, we know that she would have survived if whatever. Are you saying that you've concluded that she would have died either way? That even if she had the abortion, she still would have died?
Maybe not necessarily. I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say she would have necessarily died. But
well, then I don't get your point of why you brought up that the report doesn't say that she wouldn't have died. I don't get that.
Well, the claim, because this is based on the claim that's been made. The claim has been made that she would have required an abortion to save her life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and based on the report that I actually read, that's just not what it confirms at all. And I was just merely alluding to that claim that's commonly used for her case, that it was said that if she would have gotten an abortion, that she would have lived. And that's not what the report says. They're claiming something that's not in the report.
Yeah. Well, then I'm not sure what your stance is here. Then I mean, my understanding was that her best chance of survival was to have the abortion. That she wasn't going to survive without the abortion, and with the abortion, there was a significant increase in the chance that she was going to survive. Is that your understanding, or do you see it differently?
Well, based on what I've read in the report, they did speak of terminations. They did speak of that, and yes, I'm not. Again, based on my investigation of the facts, what they did was they extrapolated. They did use the word abortion in there. The word abortion was used, in a number of different cases, but what was not said was that abortion, in the medical context, means termination. So it could apply to, the intentional killing, or it could mean, delivery. It could mean, inducing a pregnancy. It doesn't really say either way. And I was just simply saying that it doesn't expressly make the case that what they're claiming would have happened would have saved her life. I would agree that termination would have more than likely saved her life, but just the intentional killing of the unborn, no, it doesn't say that in there.
No, so wait a second. You do say, okay, I'm having a lot of trouble with this, Antonio, because you're using the words abortion. I'm sorry, I do need to take this call. I apologize for this, but it's the middle of my workday, so sorry. Hello.
All right, just for clarification purposes, the medical definition for abortion generally is determination of pregnancy, but that doesn't have to mean that a lot of pro-aborts confuse this with intentional killing, and that's unfortunate because a lot of people, because like you'll have like a miscarriage, for example. A
Right.
miscarriage is medically defined as a spontaneous abortion, but that doesn't mean, obviously a woman intentionally killed her child. It's just it happens spontaneously through unintended means of her body, and
Right, through
which
natural
resulted.
circumstances.
Yes, and we need to be careful to when we use the word abortion, we need to be careful to distinguish between what are we talking about here, because if you look at the root word abort, which means to stop something or to suspend something or whatever, um, yeah, that's all it means. It just means to stop something. I mean, pregnancy can be terminated a number of different ways. I mean,
Yeah, including a caesarean section or, induced labor.
yes. And what they did was they say, the context is that intentionally killing the unborn child surgically would have saved their life, and there is no such evidence in anywhere in the report to indicate that at all.
No, and when did she die? Do you know? Was
It
she
was
late in her
killed.
pregnancy?
Let me see. I can't. It was 20. I think it was 20 something weeks. So hold on. Let me look it up.
Yeah, if she's that far along, it would have taken a very long time to dilate her cervix so that she could have an abortion.
Oh, she was at 17 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And at 17 weeks, at 17 weeks, generally, if they would have done like a delivery, an early delivery or something like that, then the child would have not survived, obviously. But you know, that's not to say that they would have needed to intentionally go into her body and take the child apart, because she had a blood condition which
Right.
is called sepsis, and
Mm-hmm.
the resolution of her of the sepsis blood condition in pregnancy is not an abortion. I've looked into that, and in fact, I showed you some information about that like a week or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
An actual website built to talk about sepsis, the blood condition. It didn't say that the resolution of a woman having sepsis when she's pregnant, it didn't say the resolution was abortion anywhere.
Right, and then you have people like like Steve True on YouTube who try to deny it.
That dude's a clown. Yeah, I don't get this. I don't get this guy. But yeah, he's a total clown. I would love for him to come on my hangout and debate this issue. He just looked like a total freaking moron. Because that's what I would make him look like. I'd make him just shove his nonsense down his throat, because it's just he makes these just basic elementary just fallacies that it's just laughable. Like, someone like Hawkeye, I consider like a legit, person to talk on this issue with, given our differing views. Someone like Steve True, no, that dude's just a clown.
Maybe I should link him to one of your videos and see if he'll come to Hangout.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. He can come at any time. But most of the time, what's happening with abortion procedures when a woman goes into a clinic is that they're trying to kill. In that sense, they're intentionally trying to kill with intentional killing termination, as opposed to her life being in danger, and they say, okay, we're gonna surgically extract the unborn from her body. Like, they've even tried to use cases like ectopic pregnancy to saying that, well, maybe they will need to intentionally kill the unborn then.
Yeah,
I've never even heard that they would need to intentionally kill the unborn with an ectopic pregnancy. But I mean, even if they did, I mean, you're dealing with a case to where, like in a, because that sort of an ectopic pregnancy is happening, generally when the unborn is not going to be able to survive outside the womb anyway. So even if they were to say, they had to surgically kill the unborn at that particular point to save her life, it's not even remotely the same thing.
Mhm.
Even
And
if,
it's,
go ahead.
sorry, yeah, and it's important to note that like 93% of abortions, are purely elective. They're done on healthy women to end the lives of healthy babies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that cannot be overlooked. And again, as Haltai rightly pointed out, we are on the same side of not using these sorts of cases to say that you should just justify any and every type of abortion out there. We both agree on that point. So, um, but yeah, the general medical term of abortion means determination of pregnancy.
Hmm.
And again, pregnancy can terminate a number of different ways, either through the intentional surgical killing, through early induction, through cesarean section. You have a number of different options there, and you can still categorize it under the root word abort, to stop something, determination of the um, pregnancy condition. But they extrapolate that as, the language that they use would be like, oh, if she would have gotten an intentional killing abortion, if they would have surgically chopped the baby up and removed the pieces from her, then well, they don't really say it like that, but basically they think the procedure that would have needed to have been done was like going into the womb and chopping the baby up surgically, and then that's what would have saved her life. And given her blood condition, there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that her blood condition would have been resolved by that sort of procedure. In fact, um, it states in the source and that I gave you that a woman can be more likely prone to acquire sepsis after having a previous abortion procedure.
Hmm.
So if she's more prone to acquiring that sort of condition after a previous abortion, then how in the world are we going to say that, the resolution is abortion when that very thing can lead to abortion? I mean, not to abortion, but to sepsis.
Hmm.
It's just stupid. Having an abortion can increase the chances of getting sepsis, but we're going to use an abortion to resolve sepsis. Are you serious? That's just nonsense. And for those who would need to know that I'm not just making this up, I'm gonna even pull up the facts right here in front of you. See, yeah, let's see, see. All right. Let's see here. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna screen share this. Okay, here's Sepsis Alliance. Suspect sepsis, save lives. Sepsis in pregnancy. All right. And it says, how does sepsis occur in pregnant women?
That was
Sepsis
one
can
of the links
develop.
you gave me, I think.
Yes, sepsis can develop in a pregnant woman as the result of one of many complications, illnesses, or procedures. Here are just a few. Abortions. Infections are a risk after any abortion. As a result, a woman who has had an abortion should watch for signs of infection and seek medical help immediately if there are any signs of infection. Okay. Um, See cesarean section. Sepsis can set in after surgery of any type. Okay. So either with a surgical abortion or cesarean section, sepsis can happen. So either through any one of those procedures, sepsis can occur with the pregnancy later on. I don't understand why they would say that, because sepsis was the condition Savita had. Again, it goes back to saying that, her having an abortion would have resolved her condition. When it says right here in plain English that, abortions can actually lead to that very condition. So if it can lead to it, then how in the world do they think that it's a resolution for it? It's just ridiculous. They'll have to go into a different I'll say oh, okay, I'm reading Hog Tie Champ's comments. All right, we can go ahead and continue the conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And as a sort of in my workday here, and actually it was some rare good news today, so I'm kind of glad I took that call. I'm not sure what I missed there. It kind of sounded like you were. It might not be fair for me to comment on it since I've been away for the last several minutes, but it kind of sounded like you were assessing from your own understanding of the case whether or not she would have survived after the abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't exactly know how a layman does that without a med school and OBGYN training and actually dealing with this particular patient's records. Like I wouldn't. Like, did you draw any conclusions from that? Are you saying? Because again, Antonio, the thing I was really confused because there were two things you were saying that confused me. Mm-hmm. One was that you kept using the terms abortion, termination, and intentional killing, and you would use one term, and in my mind those are the same thing.
You think as the common medical term for the general term, the termination of pregnancy. That's the general medical term. But when I'm talking about it, most of the time, I'm talking about in the context of pro-aborts use it in, like the intentional killing of the unborn.
Yeah, we're talking about and I'll often use the term, I might say surgical abortion or surgical termination, as a way of distinguishing from chemical abortions or chemical terminations, as further different to be distinguished from spontaneous abortions, which mm-hmm. don't involve any medical or surgical intervention.
Right.
But I mean, in this case that we're talking about here, she had a living fetus, and any step that a physician would take to end that life would be, and of course it would be surgical. I mean, at that stage, that would be the way to do it. You could call it a surgical termination or a surgical abortion. Like I mean, to call it a termination, it's a termination. Like obviously that's intentional. Obviously somebody would have had to go and do that physical work and would have done so with intent. So I was a little confused because you seem to say on occasion that, well, I was reading about termination and it didn't say abortion. I was confused. It seemed to me like sometimes you're drawing a distinction amongst those words in this case. And then the second thing that confused me was I was asking if you'd come to a conclusion about what would have happened had she had the abortion, intentional, like somebody surgically aborted. Would she have, would she still be alive today? Now, of course, we don't know that for sure. But I think when I asked you this, you then said, well, yeah, she probably would have survived. Those certainly weren't your exact words, but maybe just clarify that. What do you think would have happened had she had the abortion?
What I was hold on. What I was saying was that if they would have resolved her case, through termination, yeah, she could have been alive today. But I was very, very careful to distinguish the type of termination I was talking about. Um, like again, based on what I've read and seen that when we talk about what most pro-choicers mean by termination, they're talking about the intentional killing right there. Um, I would say that if they just extracted the fetus out the womb, then yes, she could have survived, absolutely. But that's not to say that they would have needed to do so by intentionally killing the unborn in the womb and then taking the pieces out for her to survive. Does that make sense?
You're saying that what they should have done was like a living removal of the fetus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as opposed
and
to...
I wouldn't have been against that.
Opposed to killing the fetus.
Right, and I wouldn't have been against that. In fact, that's usually, from my understanding, like, again, I've looked up so much research, and there's medical experts on both sides who have confirmed that the context, in abortion, the intentional killing is not only not something that's looked at, but it's unlikely to save her life anyway. So I've seen medical experts on both sides of this issue who have confirmed that the intentional killing is not a viable resolution whatsoever to save a woman's life.
Okay, this is why you keep using the word intentional. You say intentional killing. Okay, so what in your understanding, what would have happened to the... So we agree the fetus was alive. This is this distinction about whether it was living versus alive. We know this fetus was alive. What would have happened to the fetus had it been removed as you describe?
She was 17 weeks. All right. That's a pretty sizable fetus there at that point. The type of procedures that they would have had to perform to prepare her for an abortion would have probably put her in even more danger than if they were to say, induce early delivery. Because you're dealing with a pretty sizable fetus there, and you got to prepare the cervix and everything. If they were going to use an abortion procedure, the standard surgical, like D&E type of abortion.
Yeah.
They would have needed to have taken time to prepare the cervix before they even started extracting that unborn outside the womb.
Well, then how would you say that they were to get the baby out without killing it first?
Well, they have a number. They'll maybe perform a cesarean section, or they'll induce an early delivery. I don't know how they do it, but either way, they don't intentionally kill a child.
Okay. Well, this is part of what's puzzling. Okay, so I heard you mention before you're aware of the problem. It's not a problem. It's a situation. It's just what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Cervical dilation. So the cervix, as much as you see drawn in these little cartoony, like the side view of a woman, and it's like, oh, here's the uterus, here's the the cervix, and it's the vagina. They always kind of show the cervix as a bit of an opening, and it's actually more of a chamber. Like if you were to take your fist and sort of tightly close your fist, there's like a little channel that goes the long way across your hand, and the cervix is more of a channel like that. It's not just sort of an opening. Plus, it is closed. It's not. I heard you talking about this before, Antonio, and that's right. It's closed. It's not easy to get stuff in or out. In fact, even getting sperm in and out of the cervix is a bit of a trick. The cervix has to be receptive to sperm. So, I mean, the sperm are pretty small. So let alone getting a baby to pass through.
Yeah, 17 weeks.
Or even getting tools in, like if you're trying to do surgery to try to get tools through. So it actually requires a lot of preparation. Now, of course, in the case of natural natural vaginal delivery, the body itself takes days to dilate the cervix and to sort of prepare the alignment with the birth canal and everything. So that's sort of dealt with when it comes time to do delivery. But to induce a delivery, that's not a super fast process. I was going to say it wasn't fast.
Well, it's not. I wouldn't say it's super fast, but it's definitely a lot faster than 70 to 24 to 72 hours to prepare the cervix to make sure she's in a condition to where trying to pull pieces out through the cervix isn't going to like severely injure her or kill her.
Well, this is partly what puzzles me about your position, because you seem to be saying, I don't want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be saying that it would have been more expedient, and you have other reasons for supporting this too, but I'm just saying in terms of the timing, more expedient to dilate the cervix large enough that the baby could pass through intact and uninjured, as opposed to dilating it enough to where equipment could be put in and the baby could be extracted in pieces.
No, I'm
now,
saying
again, setting aside the morality of that, because I mean, I would always prefer that a baby comes out intact and not in pieces. But I'm just saying, just strictly on the practical issue, doesn't it seem?
According to what's his name, Dr. Anthony Levatino, a former abortion doctor, he, according to what his medical expertise, and he performed thousands of abortions. He said if a woman's dealing with a similar type of life-threatening case, then they can induce delivery within about an hour or two. So that's obviously a lot faster than like trying to prepare the cervix to do a surgical abortion procedure.
I'm not sure what he's referring to there, like inducing delivery within an hour. I would have to defer to his expertise on that. I mean, I don't want to take a look at where that comes from, but in the same, is that the there's different methods of doing things. Everything you do in medicine, there's different methods for doing them, and they all have their pros and cons. And sometimes you want to use a drug that might work more slowly, but has some other benefits. And then there are other circumstances you got to say, well, no, we can't do that. We got to go with the quick one. And that's why I'm saying, in terms of, I mean, the idea of inducing abortion, inducing delivery in an hour, I'd have to look at that specific claim. But
yeah,
I mean, by the same token, it's just okay. What was your answer about when I said, what do you think would happen? So this baby, let's say that the baby could. I mean, for one thing, you can get a baby out relatively quickly as long as you're not delicate, right? Like if you say we're going to do this by cesarean, so it won't be the the conventional port. We're going to do a cesarean. There's a bit of prep time for it, but in an emergency, it can be done in the order of an hour to 2 hours, with the survival of the mother. So let's say either way, they're going to get this fetus out intact. What's your understanding of what's next for the fetus? Like, would the fetus still be alive today? Obviously, it'd be a child. It wouldn't be. We wouldn't call it a fetus.
Yeah.
But now, 4 years later, like, would this be a 4-year-old child, or what's your understanding of what would happen to this fetus?
Well, okay, if they would have done it, let's say they would have been able to do it by way of because I thought you were asking that if they would have done it. I thought you were asking me if they would have done it by way of surgical abortion, that she would have died. I thought that's what you were actually asking me. That if they were, let's say they were able to successfully extract it by way of surgical abortion, would she have still died? Wasn't that what you were asking me?
I may have asked you that at some point. I did ask. Actually, I know what you're asking now. I did ask that question earlier. I guess what I'm asking is, if you sit there, and nobody has a crystal ball, but if we were in those circumstances in 2012 and said, well, what are we going to do here? We can do this or that or something else. We come up with a range of options, and we say, well, what is going to happen to this mother, and what's going to happen to this fetus if we do this or we don't do that? And I did ask. I mean, with the reality of the situation being that they essentially did nothing, which is always a viable it's always a totally defensible position in medicine, is to say, well, we're going to do nothing and let nature take its course. But so they didn't go with any sort of intervention, and she died and the fetus died. So then we're saying, well, what would have happened if they would have done a surgical removal of the intact baby? Or what would have happened if they would have done an induced vaginal delivery of an intact baby?
Right.
Or what would have happened? And every time I ask the question, what would have happened, let's ask the question for both mother and child. So initially I asked, well, what do you think would happen if they had done the abortion?
All right. And I want to lay out some context. And I wanted to lay out some context before I got to that, but now that we've laid out quite a bit of context, let's take it from here. Like, so they do a surgical abortion, right? Let's say, they successfully, extract the unborn out the womb with the surgical abortion. Hey, she may very well survive, And let's say they was able to, like if they did a cesarean section, they wouldn't have killed the unborn, but she would survive. But let's say, they managed to extract the unborn through surgical abortion without killing her. Then either way, she would survive. That's all that would have happened, is that she would have survived either way if they did it in such a way without killing her. So either through cesarean section, she'd survive. Through surgical abortion, she'd survive if they would have able to do it without killing her.
Yeah, but by the way, let me answer.
That's all that would be. She would just survive. That's all that would, that would be the product of those procedures. So,
by the way, let me, just for fun, let me answer these questions. So I'm not just grilling you. I'll answer these questions along with you. I think I wouldn't even commit to the answer that she would have survived, and I appreciate that's probably not even what you're saying, but I'm saying. If you were to ask me, well, what would have happened had they done the abortion? I don't even know that I would say, well, she would have survived. I think as far as we can say is she had a significantly greater chance of surviving with the abortion. That's fair. Because the only reason I'm saying that is because, and again, I haven't seen her case file, I haven't reviewed her chart, but there is an unfortunate history around sepsis when it's a systemic infection. That it's a real crapshoot. People get themselves in that situation through whatever means. You don't know if there's any other sort of health conditions or any other strains on the body. It's really, really hard to pull them back from the brink. So anyone who sort of looks at this situation as, well, if they don't do the abortion, she dies. If they do the abortion, then she lives. It's so much more complicated than that, because they're saying, well, if we don't do the abortion, there's this percentage chance that she's going to live. If we do the abortion, then there's that percentage chance she's going to live. And the best I would say is there's a significant difference between those two numbers to where she actually did stand a better chance. But yeah. But in terms of the fetus, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just say I agree that just kind of just throwing kind of blanket numbers on. Yeah, she would have survived if an abortion was done, or she wouldn't have. I completely agree with everything you said there.
Yeah. Okay, well then what about the fetus? What kind of odds was the fetus looking at through either leaving the fetus in situ versus induced delivery versus surgical delivery, cesarean delivery? And then I just realized my next question is silly, versus performing a surgical abortion through any means. Well, obviously in that case the chance is 0. I think we're going to come to a point of agreement there in terms of the survival likelihood for the fetus. The surgical abortion is the one scenario where, well, obviously it wasn't going to survive because they know what they're doing. They know how to get that done. So what about its chance for survival had they done nothing at all versus had they done an induced vaginal delivery versus had they done a cesarean intact removal? What do you think the odds would be?
Of the woman or of the
for the baby, just for the baby.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, she was at 17 weeks, so the survival rate is probably 0. I mean, it's obviously going to be 0 if they do a surgical abortion and just kill the kid that way, but it'll be very unlikely for the baby to survive if they did a cesarean section and just remove the baby out in whole or as whole as possible. mean, 17 weeks is very, very unlikely the baby is going to live.
Huh?
Is that what
Yeah.
you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, in my mind, it wouldn't even matter which method they used to remove an intact fetus, whether it was induced vaginal delivery or cesarean surgical method. They could have even used like some Star Trek caliber matter transference beam to just beam the fetus out. At 17 weeks, I'm actually going to look this up here real quick to see what just the youngest in human history. What's the term here? Youngest, let's say, premature.
From what I understand, is the youngest I found was like 21 weeks, 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
oh, that's a Canadian case. I'll be damned.
Yeah.
Maybe I feel like I should have known this. Yeah. So this is 1987. 128 days premature. So listed at 21 weeks and 5 days. He weighed 1 pound 6 ounces. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why the resolution case matters to me is, for the same reason that let's say someone is has a terminal cancer and there's as far as we understand like no hope of them like surviving. It'd be one thing to take a gun and shoot them to death. You don't just kill, just like intentionally, just brutally take their lives, as opposed to if they were to pass, naturally, with the just letting the horrific sickness take its course, as opposed to, in that particular instance, you go inside and you just say, we're gonna just take this baby out, and instead of just maybe delivering the child, and heck, yeah, the child ain't gonna survive though, but there's still, you're talking about passive, dying as opposed to active killing. I think there's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is. That's a really important issue, and I can tell you that there's a really one of the more difficult courses that people take in medical school is a course in medical ethics. And you think, oh well, that's easy. We just learn what the ethics are, and they give you some really, really challenging problems. Before I tell you about that, I just want to mention something here. I did a quick search here for that James Gill, the baby. As I say, this was a 1987 delivery, and he's 1 pound 6 ounces. There's actually news stories on him from 2006 because he was he turned 18 years old. And he was moving away from home and going to university, and apparently he's quite physically fit. Grew up in the small town of Prescott, Ontario. Where did he go to school? Wherever. He went somewhere to school, but apparently like he plays rugby. Like you got to be in pretty good shape for that. So good for him. Good for James. Yeah, there are a lot of really challenging ones like let's see, and there certainly is the lesson to be learned from a lot of these things are that there's a big difference between the what do they call it, like commission versus omission. But there are a lot of cases where it's tough to justify that. These are sort of this is why I say like abortion is a difficult issue, because it brings into play some things that you think might be obvious, but when you think about it, they're not. Like what about the case of a baby that has some condition, and let's not give me the details of it because we argue about whether or not this is a real thing or not. These are philosophical toy problems. So and there may very well be a condition that maps onto this. But a baby that is every baby born with this condition, they usually die on day 5, 6, or 7. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting the example wrong. Maybe I shouldn't steer the conversation off of this area because I'm sure I'm going to misrepresent the example. But they live in agony. And you have to do tube feeding to keep this infant alive. And conventionally, what they do is they just say, "Well, we're going to suspend feeding. We're just simply not going to do the tube feeding. We can't do natural feeding. We have to do this special tube feeding, and we know that this is a baby that isn't going to survive anyway, so we're not going to do that." And the question they ask is, boy, this was so long ago. You know what? I think I've totally screwed up this example. Because of course you would do what you have to do. You'd just not feed them. Anyway, there's a lot of these problems are based on. Oh, actually, here's a better one. Is the when you talk about like end of life care, and when a patient refuses, so they're on special intervention, like they have to be tube fed or whatever. So they have all these special interventions to stay alive, and they have the right to refuse this. So somebody on kidney dialysis, this is a good one. This happens all the time, by the way. This is a really good one. Sorry, I'm sorry for stammering, but this is a really good one because this happens all the time. And in fact, I have a great uncle who just 2 years ago passed away through this method. He'd been on kidney dialysis for years, and I think it was 2 or 3 times a week he had to go and sit for hours and get his blood cleaned. And he was old. He was really old, and he lived in a lot of pain and whatnot. And finally, he just made the decision. He was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm done. Thank you. It's time for me to move on. And it just caused a storm, right? Because everybody goes, oh, well, has he gone crazy? Is he depressed? Is he suicidal? So he had to get psychiatric evaluations. They talked to family members, and everybody was agreed. Well, why are we working so hard to keep him alive? He doesn't want to do this anymore. He's living in pain. He just wants to go on. So let's let him go. He's now refusing. He doesn't want to go to his appointments to get his dialysis done, and he wouldn't survive a week if he wasn't getting dialysis. Yeah. And sure enough, they got approval, right? And it was like, okay, fine. The hospital's convinced they're not going to get sued because they weren't doing the dialysis. Their only other option was to drag the guy in kicking and screaming and force him to have dialysis. So they said, okay, fine, we'll let him go. So he got no more care, and yeah, he died a week later. But it raises an interesting question of, well, if a person can. Think of the nature of the request he's making. He's saying, I'm living in agony. I don't want to live anymore. And the dialysis is the only thing barely keeping me alive. So I want you to let me die in a way that's even more painful, right? And that is going through the sickness and suffering of living with your blood that isn't being cleaned properly. And I want you to let me live in that pain for 5 or 6 or 7 days. Until I finally just die from the agony of all that. Versus, what if he'd have said, okay, look, I'm done. So this afternoon, I'd like you to, bring in the right mixture of morphine and whatever else. Just let me go out peacefully. And in my mind, that's a really difficult question, because if your goal is to reduce suffering, to provide circumstances for flourishing, and as I say, reduce the suffering, reduce harm. And this person is just, well, I'm going to be dead in 6 days. Do you want to have that person live through 6 days of agony when they requested it, or to give them the option of well, here's some morphine that you can just feel pleasant for the next 10 minutes, and then you die pleasantly. Well, why isn't that the better choice? And by the way, I'm not saying that's the right answer, because as much as I think it's bad to let somebody suffer for 6 days, I also think it's a terrible thing for a doctor to draw up a lethal dose of any drug into a syringe and inject it into a patient. I think that's a really, really hard thing to justify. Sorry, I've been talking for a long time because I stammered around a couple of examples.
It's all good. I think if we're going to have issues like the one you talked about, cases like the one you mentioned with your uncle, let them be able to make that decision. And I'm very well settled on people being able to make those decisions themselves, as opposed to you have the unborn who has no potential to make any decision themselves, and then someone else decides whether they live or die. But
that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a very, very important distinction. I certainly would agree with that. I think the cases, like when you look at the elderly and the whole right to die situation that people talk about, as much as I say I'm really uncomfortable with either of those decisions, the thing I find comfort in is exactly what you're saying. The fact that that person is a lucid, intelligent person who's lived 70 or 80 or 90 or 100 years, and they've got more life experience than I have. And you got to give that person some credit for being able to make their own decisions. These things are a lot more difficult when it's a child or an infant or a fetus that you can't really sort of respect any autonomy or consciousness or judgment. So yeah, you're right. I mean, that certainly is an important difference there. Anyway, I think we're agreed though. I don't that baby wouldn't have survived, that 17-week-old baby.
Yeah, more than likely not.
Yeah, which is why I think we're holding on to a very weird notion. If we're going to say that it would be unacceptable to terminate that pregnancy simply because it's always wrong. I'm sorry, when I don't say terminate a pregnancy. I'm going to use your term, intentionally kill that fetus.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very clouded thinking to say, like, in a case like that, it would be unacceptable to intentionally kill that fetus simply because it's always wrong to intentionally kill a fetus, right? Because here's a set of circumstances where you're like, wow. I mean, it's hard to pit one human life against another, but this woman is a person, with a dental practice and a family. She's a mother. She's a wife. And versus somebody who, for the most sad reasons, never did get a start in life. And that's sufficiently sad enough right there. And as much as I say I'm not comfortable with, I'm not at all happy about a physician using their training and their license to do something to kill a fetus. I don't like that being part of the job at all. In my head, there are circumstances where I think that very, very sad thing is the proper course of action.
Well, we're gonna have to agree to disagree right there. You think it's clouded thinking, and I don't. And we're just not gonna agree to that particular point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you're right, and I think that's a good thing too when you sort of identify, because that's what I was saying. I kind of wanted to know where the margins were, where it's like where we agree, and then when do we start to wade out to where we don't agree. And I think even this case is a case that we wouldn't agree on, and like I say, I struggle with it because. Like I say, I find it very difficult to find circumstances where you can justify what a physician needs to do to end the life of a fetus. I think just like what are you thinking? How can you justify doing that? But I'm also at the same time, and you're agreeing with that. At the same time, I'm saying I do see circumstances where that's the right thing to do, because I find it, like in this particular case in Ireland, this dentist in Ireland, I find it horrible and sad that a doctor wouldn't do what needed to be done to go ahead and to end the life of that fetus, which was going to die anyway, as part of a commitment to save that woman's life. So you see what I'm saying is I'm appalled by the whole process of abortion, and yet I'm in this one case I'm slightly more appalled at that healthcare system's inability to put a doctor in the right place to do what doctors are trained to do, and that's save lives. I just think it's really sad.
It was just a whole lot of just miscommunication and lack of oversight in what happened in that woman's case, because the laws at the time, did allow termination of pregnancy to save her life. It did allow that, but for some reason, I don't know what the heck went awry, but...
I think you're right about that. Is one other thing I think we're going to agree on, and just let you know too, I have to leave in 7 minutes. Yeah. So be sure to bring up a difficult topic so that I can run away. There's a couple of things we're going to agree on that point too. In that it's always awful for the discussion. I mean, it's good that we have case studies. It's good that we can say, well, look at this, look at this, look at that. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is craft social policy. We're trying to say, what does a reasonable and caring society do in these circumstances? And the problem when these stories come out, like this dentist in Ireland, when these stories come out, is that we tend to hold them up like these little trophies and say, well, this is a good example for our side, or this is a bad example. And yet those cases the individual cases don't inform what's going on with the rest of the cases in the world, and often we're not properly informed about the circumstances. Like, I still have to wonder how a 17-week-old pregnant woman, under that level of surveillance, like, I mean, pregnant women get a lot of doctor appointments, and especially somebody who's medically trained herself. Like what happened in that case? I don't know, and I don't think it's something you and I are going to be able to answer. But there's clearly more to this story than the political bullet points that everybody seems to be stamping out. And just let me
agree.
Yeah. Well, one other point that we agree, I know we agree on this because I know we've talked about this before, is that in my mind this is an important and interesting case. But when it comes to the issue of the discussion of abortion access, it's actually not nearly as important as people want to give credit for, because we're not talking about this dentist in Ireland and whether she should have got. Well, we were talking about that, but the debate in the United States is about what level of abortion access should be available on a choice basis.
Yeah, exactly.
The people that you're discussing this with are what they would call choice supporters, like pro-choice. They're saying like why is the rape thing important? I mean, I think as if a woman is pregnant, so let's say you take 10 women and 8 of them became pregnant through conventional means, and 2 of them became pregnant through unwanted sexual contact, whether it was like a frat party or they got like raped in an alley, whatever it is, just some awful thing. Well, one of the 2 rape victims might decide to stay pregnant, and the other rape victim might want an abortion. And of the 8 women that got pregnant, through consensual sex, 7 of them might want to keep the baby, and 1 of them might want to have an abortion. And if the pro-choice people have their way, what they're saying is those women in their current circumstances should be the ones to decide whether they're going to proceed with their pregnancy.
Right.
So the rape thing is really not the deciding factor. I mean, not that I'm saying a person couldn't make that argument. I think a person could make an argument for like that somehow there's a relevant distinction between rape versus non-rape cases. I wouldn't really buy into that argument. But I don't know anybody that makes that argument. The people who are opposed to abortion say none of those 10 women should have an abortion. And the people who support abortion access will say all 10 of those women should be given the chance to evaluate and decide for themselves. So the rape isn't even relevant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can I use the last minute to as a
go ahead.
That Carol, what's her name there? You showed those clips. Yeah, there is one thing I kind of want to object to, and I'm going to do this a little bit unfairly because, as I say, I do have to go. I have an errand to run that I have to sort of leave for early to make sure I get there on time. But what's her name? Everett, Carol Everett. I'm not her fan, man. She's kind of strikes me as a bit of a disgusting person. If what she says is true, it's terrible that she did that. And if it isn't true, the fact that this is how she makes her living now, going out and saying these things, is that's horrific. But yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I was asking you to sort of explain what we're to learn from that, and you know what? And you were saying, well, this is based on a culture of death, and I guess I want to make the point briefly, and we might have to visit this in a future hangout, but I'm going to tell you one thing that I don't find helpful in a discussion is to point to an example of where somebody does egregious stuff like that and say, well, then therefore everybody that has that job must, love death and must hate pregnancy, and they're all out there to make money and whatnot. To me, when I ask you, what do we take away from what Carol Everett is saying, what I take away from it is that this, like every other human enterprise, needs to be regulated and monitored, and to look for any sort of malfeasance and criminal conduct and things like that. The thing I find weird is that people will use Carol Everett's interviews as a foundation to say, therefore, what Planned Parenthood is doing is bad. And she has nothing to do with Planned Parenthood and never did. And what Planned Parenthood does is they provide a network of abortion clinics that work on almost like a franchise operation. And this is going to be a weird thing to say, but it's like when you go to McDonald's and you order a Big Mac, you're going to get a Big Mac that's a very, very tightly regulated Big Mac because every McDonald's does it the same way. And it's the same thing with Planned Parenthood. They have a central body that like creates the standards for what's going to happen in the franchises, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to go about it this way. This is how you talk to patients. This is the tools you use when you do an abortion. You know, this is the brand of condoms we're using, and that's all standardized in a way that is consistent with federal and state laws. So I just don't see how Carol Everett raises sort of a reasonable objection to those abortion providers that follow the law.
I see what you mean. That you can't really like use like a case like that to be like, okay, that's why Planned Parenthood is wrong. I definitely agree with that point. The standpoint I'm coming from is I think the whole thing, you know, on a number of different levels to whether you're talking about the cases of Carol Everett was dealing with, whether you're talking about the choice argument that a woman should be able to just go get an abortion if she's not willing to be pregnant. The standpoint I'm coming from is that, all of it, to me, is a collective sort of culture of death, reasoning. I'm, just taking, a number of different cases and saying, like, this is, the product of a culture, the product of a culture of death. Just thinking a woman should just be able to get an abortion because she's not pregnant. That's the product of the culture of death. Saying stuff like the unborn is a parasite or just a blob of cells, or, it doesn't have, rights until born or until later in pregnancy. I would say all that is a culture of death. That's the standpoint I'm coming from. I'm not like using one case to connect to another. I'm sort of, pointing out, what I think are different separate cases that, can, be put into a collective sort of package to say that this is a part of the culture of death that's been embraced.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I think what helps me understand where you're getting at with that is because I've heard you talk about. You don't just throw this out there. You just be like, oh, it's a culture of death. Like you've taken time in Hangouts to explain your position very well. So I think that helps me understand where you're coming from when you say stuff like that. I think you got to see that there's a big part of that I don't agree with, and even a way I would suggest that it kind of hurts the conversation. That post that we had going on this morning, or I guess starting last night, with I know John the Naturalist is really, he's had a lot to say on that thread. I opened that post making the point about how I think it's dangerous to demonize your opponents. That is, to take a political opponent and make them an enemy, and to really launch your arguments on the basis of these are bad, awful, disgusting people. And I do hear that a lot in the things that you say to people, even me, and I reacted to it today when you were saying, you said that I don't respect the lives of the unborn, or I don't value the lives of the unborn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, when you said that, I was ready to hit the hang up button. I was ready to just be like, okay, this is going to be, Antonio's now going to be one of those guys that I'm not talking to about abortion. Not that I'm saying that should sway your decision. I'm just letting you know that sort of in my mind, when I sort of think about it's a difficult issue and who's sort of reasonable to talk with, anyone who tells me that as that one kid was in here and he had this little sign that said about how, step one, like let's go kill some babies today. Like, if you think that that's my position, or you think that I don't value the lives of unborn, or you think that that all of your opponents are just like these profit-driven baby choppers, it's a way of excluding yourself from the conversation, because you're not taking an honest treatment of the other people's positions.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, let me not wander too far from my point, and that is this idea about demonizing other people. I mean, and this last year or more has been really, really big for demonizing Planned Parenthood, for example. I mean, they had that. Oh, this is a terrible can of worms. I gotta go. I'm looking at the clock. 3:03. I gotta go.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've gone through a period of being accused of either conspiring to sell fetal tissue illegally, or even actually having done so, been selling fetal tissue illegally. And there's just no truth to that claim. And what I find weird about it is let's say that Planned Parenthood was doing that. If Planned Parenthood was doing that, I think there's a whole bunch of doctors that need to lose their licenses lifelong, maybe even go to jail. But even if they did, does that make abortion itself wrong? Abortion itself would be wrong for reasons other than some abortion providers have engaged in criminal conduct. But that's not how I've seen this conversation jump off. I've seen the conversation say, oh, look at those Planned Parenthood people. Look at what they're doing now. Look at how disgusting those people are. And that's the same thing with this Carol Everett, is that she just gives people more anger about how, well, this is what abortion providers are like. And in my view, it is not even a sidestep. It's like a complete run in the opposite direction from where the conversation is to be had.
Well, we didn't really have time to go into other reasons as to your position on abortion, because we we didn't get sidetracked. We just didn't really get to the other finer points of your position. But we can probably talk about that another time, because I know you got to go.
Yeah, and actually in this case, we started talking about those these other sort of margin issues, and then I got a phone call partway through, which again was some good news. But yeah, we should do that again, because I say that's twice now I've offered it.
Just real quick, I did clarify that I could very well be mistaken on your position, and if that's the case, then I apologize. And you know what? For now, I'll just be neutral about what I think your position is.
Yeah.
I guess you are right. It would be sort of unfair for me to just kind of just jump onto sort of a negative of your position without knowing what it is. So
okay, well, I appreciate that. Neutral. I appreciate that, and certainly don't let me take the high ground on it, because I think maybe we'll do this as a teaser for when we do get to a justification thing. Because your Hangouts have actually given me an opportunity to kind of think through what the justifications are, and I can tell you that most of I'll tell you, here's a sign that you have a bad position. If your position, if you try to argue for your position and the only way you can do it is to have a list of rebuttals to criticism of your position, you don't really have a position. And if you get online, you do a Google search for justifications for abortion, you're going to find webpage after webpage after webpage that says, here's how you answer the anti-abortionists. But the pages that actually say what the justification is, they're pretty far and few between. I suggest you do that just to sort of entertain and educate yourself on how they generally, there aren't really readily available sources to talk about the justification. They're mostly like how to answer objections, and that's a sign that you got a bad position. So I'll comment more on that later. But I will say, in terms of the value, I appreciate you mentioning that, and I'm going to say that there's no way that I could honestly hold the position that the life of the unborn is exactly equivalent to any other life. I think when we talk about this again, we'll have to flesh out this idea that it's possible for one life to have more value than another life, or for one life to have more value at a particular time over the course of life, and then less value at another time in that course of life. And I want to tell you, it's an issue that I've had to wrestle with over the years, and it's not an easy one, but I think that in fairness to what you were saying, I don't take the position that, for example, a zygote has the same value as every other human life. Mm-hmm. So don't let me get away with pretending to have the claim that I value the unborn as much as I value everybody else. Especially I value zygotes as much as I value every other human life. So yeah, I will have to, when we talk about it again, I will have to admit to not recognizing as high of a value as I think what maybe other people do.
Right. Okay.
But fair enough. I was just making an objection to the idea that I don't value it at all, because man, I see a pregnant woman and I think that's us, that's life, and I gotta go. I always appreciate the hangouts, and we'll chat again soon, I'm sure.
All right, always a pleasure, Hogtie. Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right, and I guess with that said, I'll go ahead and end the hangout. Thanks everybody for watching. Until the next show, comment and subscribe. Until then, have a good day, and God bless.